workshop on April 28th. Do we have any public communication today?
Yes.
Is that on the agenda? Okay. All right, I guess we can get ready. Mrs. Christina Stefano Jackness. Sorry, thank you. Please come on up here. You can come and speak. You have 3 minutes to address the board. Thank you.
So, I could talk in front of 30 high schoolers, comes to adults and a little nervous. So my name is Christina Stefano Jackris. I'm a proud class of 99 Troy High alum, a University of Michigan math major, a parent in the district, and a high school math teacher with 17 years of experience at Novi High School, where I taught classes from pre-algebra to AP Calc. I know at this point, you guys are probably sick of hearing from me, but I feel so strongly about this that I felt the need to be here tonight to speak up about it. I'm here to reiterate my concerns about the IM math curriculum. I won't go through all of my detailed talking points, as I hope you have read my emails and posts, but I am always happy to discuss the issue. I've seen this problem from a unique perspective. This fall, I worked as a long-term sub at Boulan Middle School. Being in those classrooms, working directly with students using IM gave me firsthand insight. Quite simply, it's not preparing kids for high school or higher level math. Students are lacking foundational skills they need to be successful. The bottom line is they are missing out on the ABCs of math, and that gap does not just close on its own. Many math teachers, both middle school and high school, are frustrated with the IM. They are seeing the same issues, but they are hesitant to speak out of concern for repercussions or simply being ignored. Troy hires the best of the best teachers. These are experienced, highly qualified educators, many of whom mentor new teachers and have spent years refining what works for students. So I have to ask you, why are you forcing them to follow such a rigid and scripted curriculum? Let them do what they do best. And finally, this is becoming, in my opinion, an equity issue. Not every family can afford outside tutors. After I shared my concerns publicly on Facebook, I had at least 10 parents reach out privately asking if I could tutor their child because they don't understand what their kids are being taught. That should not be happening in a district like Troy, where classroom instruction should be more than enough. When teachers, students, and parents are all struggling with the curriculum, the problem isn't the people, it's the curriculum, and that should really be revisited. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mrs. Shannon Blasky, I think. I'm sorry if I spelled if it's pronounced your last name. Thank you.
So I've never been to a meeting like this before, and I didn't know I'd be asking the questions before everything got talked about. I'm not nearly as formal as the last person was.
To give you an idea, this is your chance to speak to the board. This is not a dialogue.
Okay.
You can say what you would like us to hear, and you have 3 minutes to do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I will be trying to be quick then. First of all, I am a Troy parent. I have 2 seniors at Athens, and I have a freshman at Athens. My freshman has Down syndrome and is in the CI program. I'm also a Troy employee. I work at Martell Elementary and in a level 4 program, and I've been there since it opened. It's now closing. But I will be hopefully somewhere in the district next year. I come here because I saw SDI was on the agenda for tonight, and backing up, I had my daughter in Troy School District when she was 4 years old, and had full trust that she was being taken good care of, and I felt like she was for the most part. Academically, I knew like being taken care of otherwise, she definitely was, but academically, I thought when we wrote those IEP goals, things were being targeted and things were being met in an organized, systematic way. And when I came to work for the district, I found out there is no curriculum for special ed. Everything is expected to be adapted from the gen ed curriculum. And when you have a student who is multiple grade levels off, preschool level stuff, doing high school level stuff, you can't just adapt that stuff. You need a separate curriculum. And I was horrified to find out this is all on the teacher's shoulders to do for each one of their students to figure it out. It's just a mess of a system, and it's failing our kids big time. They're not getting the targeted interventions and specify curriculum they need for them to actually make academic improvements within our schools.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next on our agenda are business services. First item is Boulan Park Building Renovation Project. Mr. Trudell.
Evening board. So we have our third and hopefully final bid pack here for the Boulan Park renovation project. These are a few straggler categories that just required a little bit more time through the post bid process just to fine tune some of the materials and validating through the contractors that place bids. So there's 3 bid categories. So overhead doors in the cafeteria and kitchen area, some terrazzo flooring, and then we had some acoustic spray installation categories. So all 3 have been vetted fully now. Bartonella felt confident in presenting those numbers to the board for formal approval. So the total with contingency for all 3 was $297,803. And then this would be paid for out of the 2023 and 2026 capital project funds. And then work, as we mentioned before, is set to begin essentially the day after school is out. So we'll start moving things out of that building and getting ready to start demoing and then hopefully into all the different trade areas. And then the plan is to be complete by the beginning of August 2027 with all furniture moved in. So.
Thank you, Ben. Any questions for Ben?
What are the overhead doors? What are we talking about with that?
What's from where like the kitchen and cafeteria is, the doors that come down.
Oh, like the garage. Looking doors.
And is this the last of the Boulan Park
This is
list?
3 of 3, yeah.
The 3 of 3.
Yeah.
Okay, this completes the whole
Mhm.
construction stuff.
Yeah, they were waiting on terrazzo floor really, because the delay to get the actual product in and validate its quality, make sure it was to our specs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now that we have all of them, how do we match with our budget?
It was within, I think last I checked, just under 400 grand out of the $27 million.
Okay, so
Estimate,
we're
so.
pretty close to.
Yeah, all
our
things
budget.
considered, it's a pretty good.
Okay,
Mhm.
did we have to make any cuts or anything to stay under the
It was
budget?
a long process through the design phase. I mean, we go through an initial estimate based on the initial design, and then it was pretty involved to get down to 27 million. So the hope is obviously with contingency, district wide, we have over $8 million of contingency, and we still have nearly 65% of it left as we close in on the end of Smith. So the goal is to not use all of that, and then those savings will just help further lower that cost of that building.
So are there any items in our Boulan Park list that we haven't been able to take care of because it's increased cost or anything, and we help?
No, I mean, I
No?
think just some of the scope, like the size of parts of the project might have been adjusted down or compromised on, but.
Finishes, we're making adjustments to finishes because finishes can get fairly expensive. So we made an adjustment to be more modest in some areas. Sometimes your designers want the
Pretty ones.
nicest looking finishes,
Mhm.
and we needed to narrow that and
Okay,
be a little more moderate in those areas, in some of those areas there where we were able to gain some savings.
okay.
It might be nice for the board to know that the decision that was made to reroute some of our students in attendance zones, as we had that conversation when we began the year talking about middle school attendance areas or elementary attendance areas, have started to smooth the enrollment process in the schools. So we had, when we began planning for the renovation of Boulan Park in Larson, there was consideration at that time that there might need to be an addition put onto the building in order to be able to support the programming in the building. We do not need, could not afford, nor do we need that addition. So that was a good opportunity for us to reduce cost, to be able to stay on budget. And instead, we'll be able to use all of the square footage that is currently within that building. So that was a key decision for the board to make, which has allowed us to, again, get this smooth that enrollment. So we are looking at enrollment at Boulan Park next year closer to 750 students as we kind of work through, which has been helpful for us in order to see that happen at Larson over the next couple of years as well.
Wonderful. All right, thank you. There are no comments or questions. We can move on to the next topic. Okay, all right, Mr. Trudell, next topic.
So the next topic is relating to 2 vehicle purchases. So this is something that we don't typically do often in public schools. We typically, in particular, these delivery trucks that we have both for food service and for our operations department. In some districts that are smaller, you can get away with one. A district this big, you need to split it between food service, which is delivering food from certain buildings that receive larger deliveries. Every day they're sending out the food to all the other smaller buildings. And then likewise, operation uses it to move things around the district, material, supplies. The tricky part is when you purchase something with food service funds, you're really only intended to use it for food service because federal funds were used to purchase it. So you want to be very diligent about making sure that you have a very clean split between those two. So our food service truck right now it's been broken. They've actually been renting a vehicle for close to a year now. But we do have some excess fund balance left in the food service fund that'll pay for that vehicle. And then we do also need our operations delivery truck to be replaced. It's a 2007 right now. So it's just nearing its end of life. The repairs are getting pretty costly. So we do plan to pay for, as I mentioned, the food service vehicle out of our food service fund to help deplete further those excess fund balances that we have. And then the operation vehicle, we plan to pay for out of our capital maintenance fund. So we've set aside about $650,000 dating back to 2015. We felt like this would be a very appropriate use for that, considering we only do this every 15 to 20 years. That way we can also avoid pulling it out of the general fund at this point in time. So both vehicles are just over $102,000. They're pretty big delivery vehicles. It's not a smaller van. You might see it out in the front here periodically as you leave the building, but the total cost for this is $205,610 for both vehicles. And they are part of the My Deal state contract as well. So the state of Michigan works to pre-bid these out with dealerships all across the state. That way it just makes it easier for districts like us to go to kind of a pre-bid catalog of vehicles. They do typically take anywhere from 6 to 8 months to get. So we're hoping we order it now. We'll get it sometime in the fall is the goal. So.
Any questions or comments on this topic?
You say you're expecting 15 to 20 years?
Yeah, so like right now, the food service truck was 2003 and then 2007 for the operations truck. So try to stretch it out as long as you can go. But at some point, some of these vehicles, you know, replacing tires or doing brakes, it's thousands of dollars for each one. So it's just, you're sinking money into something that just isn't worth it at this point, but we stretch it out as long as we can go. Yeah.
What will you do with the old vehicles? You can junk them or?
Yeah, typically you'll see if there's any residual value that you can get just by selling it. If not, then we would take it somewhere that we'll be able to recycle to dismantle it.
How do we maintenance those vehicles to keep them running for 20 years?
Our operations team, they just go to a local Chevy dealer and they're running, you know, oil changes a couple times a year on them, rotating tires, getting brakes checked. So that's something that quite frequently they do. The food service truck has been parked for quite a while, though, because it's just beyond repairable. So it was like $1,500 a week just to rent something. So
And just for the benefit of anybody who would be watching too, for the food service fund, there are monies that we have to draw down on, like we can't just keep
right.
saving and.
Yeah, we were at almost 1.6 million of excess fund balance. The Troy High Kitchen project was about 1.4. That drew it down quite a bit, and then this will kind of get us close to that fully drawn down model now, to where we're not going to have significant dollars in our excess fund balance.
And Dan, have you always purchased these vehicles instead of leasing them on a regular?
Yeah, leasing, the challenge with leasing is it's part of your general fund at that point. So if we're going to spend 20 or 30 grand a year on a lease, it just doesn't make sense. So if we can find alternative ways to pay for it, then we're going to do that.
Okay, wonderful. Good. Any other questions? Okay, if not, it will be on the agenda at the next board meeting.
Yep.
All right, thank you so much, Dan. All right, our next agenda item is teaching and learning, and our first item in that agenda is our K-8 reading adoption plan.
Dr. Rector's getting ready here. Just take a moment, take a step back. We have, over the course of the last year or so, even more than a year, we've been talking about PA 146 and the fact that there was a timelines built into PA 146. And that as a system, we were going to put together a plan that is in line with the timeline established by PA 146. We also identified the fact that there was an acknowledgement across the district that as per the requirements of PA 146, we were going to be choosing something. We'd be looking at a curriculum that is different, a reading curriculum that is different than we currently have, recognizing that the current curriculum is not on the state approved list, so that we were going to be investigating others that are on that state approved list. The state came out with that list in January, and as indicated, Dr. Recker and his team have been digging in, and this presentation is reflective of all of the work that has been done prior to that and then since, in an effort to build out a plan that will take us through the next several years. Keeping in mind that step one was identifying a tier one curriculum, which is what we're going to talk about tonight. There are additional steps that are built into that timeline, assessments and screeners and all of those things that are to come. Those are still to come. And we'll be talking about more of those as we go. But tonight's conversation is really about that tier one resource that we want to get started with piloting next year. I'll talk a little bit about 35M grant and our ability to utilize that to leverage that grant, which is really exciting, I think, for us moving forward, because that takes some pressure off the general fund. And then, if it's okay with you, I think we'll let Dr. Recker and the team get through the presentation, and then we can save questions to the end. That's all right.
Okay, that's it. All right, thanks.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all. This feels like a long time coming. It has been our big behind the scenes, not really behind the scenes, in front of the scenes now, project for the last 10 months. So we are excited to update you on what we've learned so far and where we are at with our pilot process with tier one materials. It has been extremely exciting to think about reinvigorating our work and also to imagine what's possible for Troy kids. We've set some lofty goals for ourselves, so we've challenged some of our assumptions and we've set new goals, all with trying to keep true to the parts of our mission that remain the same. So tonight we look forward to inviting you into that. I'm here with Lisa McDonald, our pre-K through 5 literacy instructional specialist, and Amanda Fisher, our 6 through 12 literacy curriculum and instructional specialist as well. So we wanted to start out with a common definition of what we mean by two pretty dense word terms to unpack. The first being the science of reading, and the second being structured literacy, just to provide you with a little bit more vocabulary to think about it, although I know you're learning about it as well too. So an important note about when we talk about being in alignment with the science of reading is we are not talking about the media version. There are a lot of headlines that simplify the science of reading as like a phonics only approach or children only in basals. And so tonight we first wanted to provide you what PA 146 defines the science of reading as. The science of reading means a cumulative and evolving body of evidence whose research studies follow a scientific process of inquiry and utilize scientific methods to help answer questions related to reading development and issues related to reading and writing derived from research from multiple fields of cognitive psychology, communication sciences, developmental psychology, education, special education, implementation science, linguistics, and neuroscience. So what's important for this team to know is that that is a body of research that expands over 50 years and is continuing to evolve because we're a social science. And so we are always learning new things. As soon as like 2 months ago, there were new pieces of research coming out about it. MDE, though, has defined it so that we can work within the parameters of it. Specifically, MDE is calling for districts to take a structured literacy approach to achieve the science of reading. So you can think of structured literacy as a pedagogical way to achieve the science of reading. So when we say the structured literacy, we mean systematic, direct, explicit, cumulative, and diagnostic instruction that integrates listening, speaking, reading, and writing, and emphasizes the structure of language across the speech sound system, the writing system, the structure of sentences, and the meaningful parts of words, the meaning of words, phrases, sentences, and text, and the processing of oral and written discourse. So structured literacy attends to the big 5 of literacy. It cares about vocabulary, phonological awareness, phonics, fluency, oral language, all of those items in service of the ultimate goal to comprehend and understand what we read. So it is not just phonics. So PA 146, as Dr. Macheski said, calls for us to do a lot to hopefully do the best in literacy ever. Here are some of the big buckets of it that Oakland Schools has defined for us, and they lead my group through part by part. The first is assessments and screeners. The second is multi-tiered systems of support, or MTSS. The third will be a literacy coaching model defined in broad terms by the state. The fourth, professional learning that should be provided to all those who instruct students in literacy. The next, there will be special considerations for English language learners that we're unpacking. But tonight is all about the suggested Tier 1 elementary reading curricula that the state has produced in this summer. But you know in Troy that we also have our own internal calendar. And in order to have a K-8 vision, we are also talking about K through 8 at this time. And it's our team's goal to have a common through line with K through 8 literacy instruction. MDE also has a timeline. This graphic we keep going back to because it helps settle us of what's now and what's later, because there's so much to unpack. There's been so many times at the end of an Oakland Schools meeting this year where I'll grab Susie into it and say, but what about blank? And she's like, that's in May, that's in June, that's in July. So we're kind of taking it step by step. But some highlights for this is TA means technical assistance, when the state tells you some steps for how you could achieve this or provide some guidance. PD means when the state provides some kind of guidance, some kind of direct learning on how to achieve the thing. Oftentimes that PD comes from Oakland Schools. So Oakland Schools and other ISDs meet with state representatives. They think about how to unpack and distribute this to their local school districts. And then we go to Oakland Schools to learn. The items in blue are things that the state is responsible for. So you can see they have a lot of things that they're responsible for right now. And then the items in yellow are the district responsibilities. And to put it in context, the 27-28 school year is when we really have to have all pieces in part. That does mean we have to start moving now, which we've been doing, but we still have time. So by 27-28, we will have to have selected our assessment or screener for flagging characteristics of dyslexia. We will have to implement evidence-based instructional methods. We'll have to provide a PD assurance that those who instruct in reading have been taught about structured literacy and the science of reading, as well as characteristics, primary and secondary, of dyslexia. And we will also have to make sure that we've also considered the unique needs of newcomers and our multilingual partners. So the Troy process, though, that we've been working through is the one that you all blessed for us a few months back. This is a process we developed in collaboration with Oakland Schools. So tonight we're going to be previewing what we've done so far regarding establishing a curriculum review committee to look at K-8 materials, doing research, and also developing a vision statement that will guide our work and our selection process, exploring materials and then piloting those materials. So we're kind of in between that phase right now to provide you an update. And then a year from now, we would be coming back to you to provide a recommendation of what we believe is the best option for adoption at scale. And then what our plan would be to support implementation as it continues. That's one item we're continuing to stretch ourselves with as we've revamped our administrative regulation. It's not just adopting, but like, what's that continuous support look like over time and what we have the capacity to do. So the first thing we did after we alerted all of our different parties about our change and started to collect feedback was establish a curriculum review committee. For literacy, we were lucky that we have a literacy leadership team made up of a diverse group of classroom teachers, literacy specialists, ELD specialists, special education teachers, principals and district administrators, and teaching and learning CIS. On most days, we had approximately 60 people engaged in those meetings, some who could come and not come depending on availability after school.
60.
60, yeah. We began our team actually as a K-8 literacy leadership team, which was really cool to bring the whole group together to say we want a through line in our work, and it's not something that we're going to do in isolation. And then as our work continued, we at times broke off into individual teams if the work got level specific. So the team first engaged in research and vision after we communicated the change. And we did a lot of data review already as a district, but we immersed this team in some of that data that you are all already privy to. So we looked at our aggregate data of national, state, county, and district trends over time. Honestly, that was a very enlightening experience for a lot of our teachers. They're so busy day to day with their classrooms that we don't always stop and take that big global view. We also looked at a current snapshot of our subgroup data to create urgency around our subgroups, looking to serve better. And we looked at perception data from staff, families, and middle school students. So you were all familiar with these charts, and I know you saw them ahead of time, but this is an example of one that we showed our team to wrestle with and to help them understand the context of our literacy reform. And really what this NAEP graph shows us is that in the United States and also specifically in Michigan, there is a need for literacy enhancement. And Michigan specifically, unfortunately, is a state that is in the bottom portion of literacy. So reminding ourselves that there is global room for improvement. From there, we took a snapshot specifically at ourselves in relation to the county, in relation to the state. And what we wanted folks to understand was where we once were before COVID and where our numbers now have gone in a downward trend, similar to the county and the state. We are very proud of our relative performance, but we always ask ourselves to do better because we also know we have students who come with specific privileges as compared to other districts as well. So this year we were excited to see elementary dip up in the correct direction, and we were also proud of our third graders who were the highest cohort in the county. But essentially we were both praising our staff and calling them that we have a chance to look inward of how to do even better. We also looked at middle school data as well too. A lot of our data follows county and state trends. We're again proud to be above, and in middle school specifically to have had several years starting to rebound, but setting the goal that we want to be where we were pre-COVID and beyond. Like we want better literacy acquisition and the joy of reading for kids than ever. And really this law is a chance to make that happen and to lean into resources provided by us. 8th grade is a different test, as you all know, so that the percentages are going to look different here and not to be compared. But you can see that the 8th grade performance rebounded somewhat quickly, close to it, but then has been relatively flat the last 2 years. And then we showed our team, because they don't often get to see this at a district scale too, like how are our subgroups faring? Because we know in a high performing district, you can be distracted by the average. And so we looked at our economically disadvantaged students, our multilingual students, and our special education students, and challenged ourselves to think, how does this law provide us an opportunity to do better for all kids and specifically for our underserved groups, and give our staff that context?
In addition to achievement data, we also reviewed perception data from staff, families, and students to better understand experiences with our current literacy instruction and materials. So overall, feedback reflected strong engagement and positive experiences, alongside a consistent desire for clearer and more explicit foundational literacy instruction. Families also reported positive perceptions of reading growth and confidence in their child's literacy skills. Their feedback aligned closely with staff, so emphasizing that greater focus on foundational skills, as well as asking for more materials and guidance to be sent home for families to be able to support their children with their literacy and skills. Taken together, staff and family perspectives revealed shared strengths and common priorities. And this definitely helped directly inform our literacy vision and evaluation of the curriculum that we reviewed and our pilot decisions.
Similar for our 6-8 teachers and staff, as well as families. Both staff and families really appreciated the student choice that we have in our current curriculum and units of study, but they also feel a desire for more class novels and some scaffolding and materials to help with that. They staff did report that they feel like they have to create a lot of things in addition to. Families also want more instruction for grammar and spelling and vocabulary for the students. We had 1,441 of our middle schoolers complete two questions, two open-ended questions in a survey. Basically, what do they enjoy and appreciate about their ELA classes, but then what they wish for. So, can you see it up there? Those large, like all caps, like way less writing, that's too much. So a lot of the student feedback and what they were hoping for in the areas of growth was, less writing, more projects, more time to read books. So that is actually something to celebrate. Students really liked the idea or enjoyed their time in book clubs and being able to have dialogue with their peers in different genres of book clubs in sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. They do report a little bit that reading logs and book talks make reading a little bit more stressful, as we would all probably agree.
So the biggest thing that we've really leaned into this year is our professional learning to challenge our assumptions. So we've done some professional learning as like a leadership group, and then some that we've trickled down to our literacy leadership team to start, and then some that we'll preview that we also have just brought to like pre-K through 12 to start helping them understand this change. It will definitely be an ongoing journey though. So Oakland Schools has been such wonderful partners. We have a monthly PA 146 leadership series. Honestly, now lately it's been about twice a month because people have requested for more help. They usually unpack part of the law. They will often tell us to accept non-disclosure, and they're not totally certain. Like they have to interpret the law and then teach us about it, but they are still remarkably helpful in navigating step by step. And they will also go through individual problems your district is having and help provide guidance. In addition to that, monthly, I attend an instructional leadership network that usually provides ideas of how to engage people in these topics. We have gone to Sarah Smotherman and I have gone to an MTSS handbook session to think about how to have a handbook that reflects the changes and work on that behind the scenes. We have sent a group of people to structured literacy and essential practices, the what, why, and for whom, because we're also thinking about how to teach our teachers a lot of those practices and do it at scale. We've gone to the reading brain, implications for all, including students with dyslexia. And then the best part really is though the ongoing support, not just with our curriculum adoption process, but PA 146 in general with Oakland Schools. This really is not an exhaustive list. Like our secondary team is going to, you guys call it SLICS, right?
Yeah, so SLICS is new at Oakland Schools for secondary literacy specialists, since it's a new role in many of our neighboring districts, obviously in Oakland County and here for us in Troy. So that is largely focused on PA 146 learning and understanding and dialogue. They also, our members are engaged in the Literacy Leadership Network. So their schedules have been a little bit tricky to get there consistently, but we have at least two of our specialists representing us at those meetings.
And that's been especially powerful because PA 146 heavily focuses on pre-K through 5, K through 5, but it definitely has parts of the law that apply all the way through 12th grade. So having a network of secondary support and interpreting the law and even the science of reading from a secondary perspective has been very helpful. We've also sent some special educators to UFly trainings as well. The list is exhaustive through Oakland Schools. They've done a phenomenal job. As a team, we've also stretched ourselves of what learning do we need to start engaging in to lead this at scale too. So we have a leadership cohort that will be going to the administrative strand of letters training. We have our kickoff meeting in about a month. Lisa and I are both a part of that team of 6 individuals who will be going to it. And it's specifically about how to teach from a systems lens related to the science of reading, which we're excited about with our group. That is a 2-year commitment, so it's not an immediate fix, but it is an ongoing commitment we have. The funny part has been the vendor visits because there've just been so many. We have visited with 14 different vendors. I started adding it up the other day and I was like, I think I've spent genuinely more than 24 hours with vendors. And then I stopped thinking about it because that was, maybe didn't know how to interpret that. Because some we've even met with multiple times because our initial meetings have led to more questions. Or then we only wanted to focus in on elementary, or then we wanted to see it back at secondary. Because some of the items in the list we're going to talk about have like secondary curriculum that is somewhat related to their elementary curriculum as well. One of the best parts for me and being new to my role has been the district visits. So we have really been breaking down silos with our districts all of us across the county to collaborate. And so we're very thankful to the districts listed on the slides who have opened up their classrooms, sometimes within 24 hours.
Yeah.
When we had follow-up questions to let us see, and to not do a dog and pony show, but to let us really see it in action. So we got to go to Novi to go see arts and letters in action in a second grade classroom. We got to go see all levels at Birmingham of arts and letters in action, as well as for elementary at Pembroke, as well as at BCS. We got to see middle school in action as well too, which is really nice of them. We were thrilled to get to go see South Lyon and their work with Collaborative Classroom and UFly as people who are a few years ahead of us. Same thing with Birmingham as well in their implementation. And West Bloomfield has done so much thoughtful work on EL education, and they are now adopting it up through their middle school as well too. So we have gotten to see them in action, and they were as great as to say, hey, after our spiel and our journey, we're going to just give you unbridled access to our teachers because we want you to hear everything honestly. So our district partners have been amazing to see it in action. And while we've tried not to overwhelm them with bringing all 60 literacy leadership teams, we've at times brought like small cohorts of who got to see both things with us. Really too, as a team, we have pushed ourselves to read some primary and secondary research related to the science of reading and structured literacy. We feel like it's super important to read it directly ourselves and to be immersed in it. And so we've read a lot of work from U of M scholar Nell Duke. So specifically the science of reading progresses, communicating advances beyond the simple view of reading. She and Cartwright out of North Carolina also are really doing a lot of research since 2023 about executive skills and the science of reading, talking about how you can't just teach these things in isolation, but you still have to attend to like the motivation and executive functioning of these children. And our literacy leadership team that really spoke to of our teaching in the past 4 years, how important it is to consider neurodivergent learners within this context. We have also been reading Seidenberg. He does a good job of keeping a WordPress too of as he updates. He's getting ready to release a new book as well too. So he's helped us understand a lot about structured literacy. Tierney and Pearson have done a nice job of teasing out, here's what the media might distract you with in the science of reading, but this is what the critical body of research says. And this is the complex view. So we've engaged our literacy leadership team in understanding that too. And to be honest, when we started, a lot of people said that some of these simplified media versions are what they had heard. And so digging deeply into the research was powerful for that team. We had to do a lot of learning around what does the science of reading mean in middle school? Because I will tell you, a pro and a con of our process is we are one of the earlier districts to think about tier 1 materials for middle school and to go through that connection. And you know, we have staff asking us as soon as this began, like, will I be in my classroom as a middle school teacher be teaching individual letter sound relationships? Like, you know, they had genuine questions related to that, and we did too. And so, to be honest, so we've done a lot of research, and we're very blessed to have a strong partnership with Dr. Misty Sailors too, at University of Texas at San Antonio, I believe. And she now works for Wested too, and she consults with us for a lot of our PD. And what we helped our secondary staff understand is we will need an MTSS system that handles children who come to us due to disrupted school history or background experience or learning disabilities and are not yet breaking the code. That happens in middle school and high school sometimes, and we've been working really hard on that. But for the most part, Shanahan and other scholars say that you need a system that helps with that, those kiddos. But the science of reading at middle school also includes more so like morphology when you think about phonics. So finding meaningful parts of words, think like prefixes and suffixes, those parts that help you unlock the meaning of lots of unknown words so that you can free up your cognitive abilities to do deep reading. But that was really helpful for our secondary team because they're like, what is this going to mean? And we're like, let's learn about it. And then while we've been doing a lot of specific work to the science of reading and structured literacy itself, we've also kept an eye on our district. We want to achieve these things and do foundational explicit skills better than ever. And we see a need for it. But we also want our kids to love reading and to read whole text. And so Catherine Marsh, who writes for The Atlantic, had a nice article reminding people too of the importance of still reading whole books in hand and not oversimplifying this. The science of reading is not about reading excerpts in a basement. Trying to think if there's anything else. We've read a lot. I have all this stack. This is another interesting one that talks about the K-12 trend, the K-12 progression in the science of reading. And Natalie Wexler, who is a JD and also just like an education historian, does a really good job of giving like a synthesis of what the science of reading even means and what research is actionable and quality research. So for me, this was my spring break reading. My third grader was like, finally came up to me and was like, why are you always reading about the science? Then I went to a coffee shop for the rest of the day. So we've done a lot of shared reading and we have now started we've now started the process of bringing that learning to all teachers. This will be an ongoing process. It definitely has to be a manageable part for them. And what we've done so far is on our March PD day for all pre-K through 5 teachers and all 6th grade through 12 ELA teachers. We did a professional learning session that Dr. Salos helped us with on the background too. And we went over various models that inform the science of reading. So we taught our staff about the simple view of reading. We taught our staff about the active view of reading. We taught our staff about the Scarborough's rope and help them like to frame all of the things we'd be talking about. We also had to help our staff begin to understand what about this change do they already do and like where they can see themselves in this work as the start of change. And what are some ways we previewed that things might become different in the future. So we did kind of like a cross comparison of how a balanced literacy and structured literacy to help them see the overlaps and the nuances of change. We then previewed the pilot process with them and did a lot of like, teachers work so hard and have so many preps. There was a lot of fear of like, how are we going to get this all done? So we did a lot of also like just unpacking what we're doing and when we'll be to you next to keep delivering some of that learning. They also then had a chance to indicate if they would be willing to participate in pilots once the literacy leadership team got through that stage of the process. We were also excited that we had ELD specialists and special educators wanting to join us in that work. So all of that led us to a shared vision. This is in your packets that we provided you because it's a lot to read, but I will read it for you. And what was most powerful about this, working with Chris and Christine and Lisa and Amanda, was having a K-8 vision. And so as a team, we did our research, we collected their feedback, we brought it back to them. If this is what you really meant, we wrestled with parts of it. This is what we wrote. We believe literacy learning is a complex, purposeful process that integrates reading, writing, speaking, and listening. Our vision is to develop joyful, engaged, and lifelong readers and writers through authentic learning experiences that balance explicit instruction and student choice and voice. We are committed to a cohesive K-8 literacy framework that values high-volume reading, strong foundational skills, and differentiated instruction. We recognize that our students are diverse learners, and we will ensure curriculum and practices reflect their identities, cultures, and language development needs. We will center our students in decision-making, honor teacher expertise, and continuously improve through research, collaboration, and effective professional learning. By valuing authenticity, access, equity, and rigor, we prepare students with the literacy skills, stamina, and critical thinking needed for college, career, and life. Above all, we're committed to doing what is best for every TSD student, developing confident, competent, and empowered readers and writers. So you've read the tall order, and now we're ready to do the work. And we're going to talk to how we explored that long list of resources that we began with. And we'll first talk about our K-5 exploration.
Yeah. So in addition to the teams engaging in shared learning and creating that K-8 vision, we studied a variety of rubrics that help us to establish common expectations for high quality literacy curriculum that aligns both to our district pillars and to the PA 146 requirements. It's important to know that all of the curriculum on the MDE recommended list already went through phases of rubric review. So phase 1 was the Reading League rubric, phase 2 was Ed Report rubric, and then phase 3 was ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Act. As a team, we reviewed these rubrics that went through that MDE process so that we could have a better understanding of what was included on the rubrics And was there anything missing that we felt was important for us to also have a lens when we were looking at curriculum? This is a process that Open Schools took us through as well. So being a part of that PA 146 leadership series, they had us look at the rubrics and do that same type of activity. And then I brought that back to the elementary leadership team and secondary leadership team as well. And what we noticed is that the rubrics that were used for the MD recommended list did focus very heavily on foundational skills, which was important for us because it gave us a lens that we knew what we needed to really focus in on when we were looking at curriculum. But we did notice that there were parts that were missing that we value, as you saw in that vision, and you're going to see in the rubrics in front of you too. And that was that culturally responsive piece. That again is really important to our literacy team. And in addition to making sure that we're leaning into all of our Michigan State standards beyond just those foundational skills. So in addition to those rubrics, we also brought in the New York University Culturally Responsive Scorecard, as well as having the opportunity for our leadership team to really take a close look at our Michigan State standards in the area of ELA. So the MDE rubrics that were used, in addition to those other components, we synthesized all that information and utilized that to create our leadership rubric that you see in the folders in front of you that we use to evaluate each one of the curriculums. So I'm going to explain this document to you. I know there's a lot to unpack here, but it is nice to be able to see all of the curriculum that was on that Tier 1 recommended list. And I want to start off by just having you focus in on Scarborough's reading rope. So like Dr. Rucker was sharing with you, we had the opportunity to look at different theoretical models of reading instruction. And Scarborough's reading rope is showing us that with increased strategic behaviors, in addition to increased automaticity in the areas of language comprehension, so the top part of the rope, as well as the bottom part, word recognition, woven together is what helps us to have skilled reading. With language comprehension, if you look at just that first component, it's thinking about building of that background knowledge for students, that explicit focus on vocabulary, as well as the understanding of language structures, verbal reasoning, and literacy knowledge. Language comprehension is the term that's used for that part of the rope is knowledge building when we're looking at curriculum. So in all of the curriculum that we viewed, it had a knowledge building component of your reading block. And that was teaching into those language comprehension parts of the rope. Then you see word recognition, so phonological awareness, decoding, and sight recognition, what we call phonics. And that is referred to as the foundational skills component of the reading block. So with the curriculum on the recommended list, you will see at the very top that there are some that fall under language comprehension, meaning that it's matching that top part of the rope, but it needs that additional curriculum of those foundational skills to be working together to have that skilled reader. Then at the bottom in the purple, you see those MD foundational skills curriculum options. So that is just like your phonics part of the day and your word study part of the day for when our children are getting into the upper grades. And then there's comprehensive curriculum options. So that is within that curriculum that it is teaching into the knowledge building and the foundation piece. So when we were reviewing and meeting with all of the vendors on the list and seeing the teaching in action and really having the opportunity to look at each one of these curriculum, we knew that we wanted to have a foundational piece that we would be moving forward with to pilot, whether it be a comprehension curriculum or a comprehensive curriculum. Arts and letters is up there as language comprehension, but really we kind of took that as like a main curriculum to look at as well with a comprehensive, because it was for knowledge building, so in alignment with all of the other curriculum that was listed as comprehensive. So we reviewed that, like I said, as one of the main curriculums, as well as having a foundational piece too. So what you see here next is our overall average in scoring for all of our kindergarten through fifth grade teachers. So when our leadership team was able to review the curriculum, they broke up into grade level teams. So for example, third grade team would be together, and each one of those teams had a literacy specialist, an ELD specialist, a special education teacher, teaching and learning, and an admin join their group for the review process. And they were able to review curriculum with the lens of each one of our district pillars. So thinking about deep learning, equity and well-being, building capacity, and early childhood to career. So here you can see that clearly collaborative literacy, collaborative classroom was the front runner with all of our K-5 teachers in every area of the rubric. At the end of the time together, those grade levels were able to come back to reflect, debrief on their scoring, which was both the number score and anecdotal. And then each one of them, in addition to that, was able to individually vote on which curriculum they wanted to move forward to pilot next year. And for the comprehensive curriculum, you can see that, again, collaborative literacy was the front runner. It earned the highest and most consistent scores across every one of our grades for the evaluation criteria, indicating a strong, coherent instructional design that would be suitable for our system-wide pilot implementation. Again, all of these curriculums on the list are deemed by MDE to be in alignment with PA 146 and to be quality curriculum. With collaborative literacy, for our team, it was meeting all of those requirements, and in addition to bringing in those other pieces that we really valued within our vision and within our pillars of our rubric. So just some highlights of collaborative literacy. It's a comprehensive, evidence-based K-5 program, intentionally integrating the foundational skills, deep comprehension, and rich knowledge-building literacy experiences with daily social skills instruction. And that social skills piece really stuck out for our leadership team, because there's that SEL component that is embedded in every single lesson for every single grade level that really builds on each other, K-5, in addition to all the alignments with the legislation. So again, alignment with evidence-based practices. The Reading League indicates that collaborative literacy effectively incorporates those critical components of Scarborough's reading rope. Assessment that informs action. So we really thought about assessment within each one of these curriculum. What does it include? How is it used? And in collaborative, there are both formative assessments as well as end of unit summative assessments, where we can measure things like comprehension, vocabulary, word study, spelling. There's often exit tickets, so like daily type of check-ins that you can have for your students. And then there's placement and progress monitoring tools that are embedded so that we can be really targeted and intentional with small group instruction as well. Differentiated instruction was an important lens for us as well. So that ability to be able to have real explicit whole class instruction, as well as those targeted intentional small groups. So being able to have time and space to be responsive to each one of our students within the curriculum was of high importance to us, as well as that daily independent practice. The opportunity to take everything that they're gaining from that knowledge building and those foundational skills and apply it into continuous text and still have large volumes of reading throughout the day. As well as support for all of our students, including our multi-language learners that's embedded within the curriculum. High quality fiction and nonfiction texts. Again, having a range of texts that reflect the background identities of our students is so important to what we value. and having those mirrors and windows for our students within the books in the classroom, and the variety of text. So with collaborative, we have those interactive read alouds, trade books, decodables, rich IDR classroom libraries, kids still having the opportunity to engage in book clubs. So that variety of types of text and real books in kids' hands. So here you're going to see the scoring for the foundational piece. So remember that really busy chart talking about how we wanted to focus on a comprehensive and we wanted to focus on a foundational when we're moving forward to a pilot. And here you can see that UFly was clearly the front runner with all K-5 teachers, again, in each area within the pillar. When they individually were able to vote on which curriculum to move forward with, you can see that UFly, again, is what the team felt strong as what they wanted to pilot and learn more about. Some highlights of UFly Foundations. It is an explicit and systematic program. And again, going back to what PA 146 is asking for and what we really need to lean into with those foundational skills is having a strong scope and sequence, being very explicit in our instruction, allowing a lot of time for practice and feedback in the moment, mastery of skills for our students, and targeting those foundational reading skills that we know are so important. So when we're thinking of both decoding, I can read the words, and encoding, I can also spell the words, and making sure that they're mastering that along the way. We also were looking at what other supplemental resources come along with those foundational programs. So being able to have decodable passages and optional homework practice. So again, going back to our family saying, we want to hear more. We want to see more ways that we can help at home, both with UFly and collaborative. There is good communication about what's being learned and ways that you can be helping to support your child at home, both in that knowledge building and those foundational pieces as well. With UFly, another important factor is that we were thinking about materials for teachers. And with UFly, it's low materials, but high impact for our students. It wasn't another consumable, like year-to-year cost workbook that our students are working within. And we were thinking about tech. So how much technology is involved in any of the curriculums and in the foundational curriculum, but also with the comprehensive as well. And it's very low tech. So we didn't want to, we were concerned about how much tech is used for instruction or how much tech is used for practice. And is that practice in an embedded part of the lesson, like I have to, or is it an optional or an additional if you want more practice? So UFly being very low tech as well as collaborative too. And that UFly has embedded weekly progress monitoring. And that was important too, to be able to always keep our pulse on how are our students doing, and that opportunity for if we have students who are needing that additional support, then we have those tools and resources, and we have that progress monitoring data to show us exactly where we can target and where they are within that phonics progression.
So next year, we intend to run 2 pilots at our elementary. The goal of these pilots is to inform implementation and figure out concerns and things we need to get together as a group before piloting at scale. That was a new way of thinking for me, to be honest. I originally thought that this might be like an A versus B situation as I planned this process with the team. But as I visited other districts, a lot of them did tell me, and Oakland schools encouraged as well, that if you have a product that meets your values and the team is all the way behind and there isn't a close second, lean into the values of that product and pilot it to learn from it before you do it at scale. And our educators said in the survey afterwards that they did feel that they were not interested in piloting a second thing. That they really wanted to lean in and get good at collaborative literacy for the comprehensive pilot. And note that collaborative literacy is comprehensive, but our team agreed with others that we still wanted to add a foundational to it. So we will also be piloting UFly. It is our intention that if those products work as we hope, that we would do them both together in the future And that would be our recommendation a year from now. We have a lot to unpack before we could make that recommendation to you. But we would intend to pilot them separately because it is going to be a ton of learning for both. And we've got that feedback from our districts we visited as well too. With the intention of knowing how to unpack them well enough that the year following, teachers would do both. So they will go together. So we're not suggesting one or the other long-term, should we like these pilots. We would expect that this is the new phonics curriculum and that this could be the new comprehensive curriculum.
So collaborative literacy, the team felt that the foundations portion just wasn't like strong enough? Is that-
Yeah,
With any of the comprehensive curriculum that we looked at, there is a foundational piece. And comprehensive has a good foundational piece, as did the others, but we wanted to do our own due diligence to say, let's look at a foundational piece and see. Is this something that we feel we need to have a resource in addition to? Also knowing that we have the potential to like tap into that more for students who need additional support amongst just beyond just tier 1, 2.
we did think it could be enhanced.
Okay.
And we got that feedback from South Lyon as well, too,
Yes.
that they were loving it, and also by doubling down on the foundational component that they were really moving children.
So I have the opposite question. Does the youth league have the comprehensive piece to it?
Just phonics. It's just, the phonics. And
So when we pilot youth league, how do we make sure that our kids are, we're not
Great
going
question.
to just mechanics? like
Yeah.
one spot run?
Great question. So the teams, the classrooms that are piloting collaborative literacy, they would not be doing the reading unit of study while they are piloting. Because collaborative literacy, being a reader, would be the reading at that time of the pilot. So that's the only thing that would be adjusted in their room. But the teams that are piloting UFly would stop doing the units of study phonics at that time and keep doing our current units of study for
For
reading,
reading,
so that they have all elements of reading.
okay.
But in the 27-28 school year and beyond, we would be combining. If it goes as we think, we have a lot to learn too.
Yeah, okay.
One of the best parts about this is, that at the start of the year, we indicated our interest in 35M funds. We did not at that time have the voices of our teachers at the table or have gone through the process to pick the right thing. We did at that time also look at what we were interested in UFly. And we also looked at the cost of UFly. UFly is very inexpensive, which is also great, but we received a very large, up more than $1 million allocation. We were not able to spend that all. We were spending closer to
10,000, yeah.
and then we were, really trying to, and it didn't feel responsible. So we engaged our teams in the process and feel that it is in our best interest. And I would be recommending that the board allow us to use our 35M allocation to buy collaborative literacy, being a reader. We would actually be able to buy it at scale and to use that full allocation. So by doing that, it would allow us to use the governor's funds to get high quality literacy materials. And should in a year from now, we love it, we avoid that cost in our general expense. Should we not love it and it not be what we want for our students, we would give it to another district that would be willing to put it in the hands of kids. Because I will tell you in this journey, there are a lot of districts that don't have the same robust teams or leadership or governance related to this, and there are going to be districts in that scenario as well too. So that would be our recommendation to really have a great financial win for our district. And should this be what we think it is, be able to have it without in a time of financial,
So
concern.
if I understand correctly, you want to purchase the full set for the entire K-8, K-5, yeah, K-5, while we are just doing a pilot, just to use the funds. Is that?
Because if we then liked it and a year from now, we would not have to purchase it out of our general.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And that is the governor's intentions, that we use this to get literacy materials in the hands of kids. These grants are pretty prescriptive. You can only buy one thing with it. We have a handout for you guys related to that.
Yeah,
It's unknown what will be allocated the next year. And so this is honestly, I see it as a great opportunity and I'm excited that the team got their voice at the table without me making an isolated recommendation. So we amended our grant application and it was approved, and Dan can tell me if I'm saying the correct language here. And so we have those funds available to us.
absolutely.
We'd like to talk to you also though about what our team thought about our.
Are there any other questions on the elementary piece?
So,
Yeah.
Sure there are, so.
Yeah.
you were just
So-
waiting.
The purchase would cover the purchase for the entire K-5, but the entire K-5 would or would not be piloting, or
Would not,
okay, all
Yeah.
right, so you have your select
yes,
people, but you'd have all the materials ready to go if it's a done.
yes,
Okay, all right.
yeah,
Do you have like scale of that? How many people do you anticipate
yes.
piloting which, and where's that gonna kind of happen?
We're thinking of
On the slides. but
Yeah,
yeah.
later in the slides, we talk about
Oh,
how
sorry.
approximately, that was a slide we added actually, basically. So that's everything. 70 teachers, we actually, the elementary teachers are very excited to pilot this and the middle, and we have 70 teachers that we anticipate, because we're also thinking about who we can support well too. Because the point of learning about it at a small scale is to learn those lessons before it goes to large scale. So we would anticipate 70 teachers in K through 5 being involved between the UFly and the collaborative literacy pilots.
And making sure we have all buildings represented too. So we have piloting happening all across the district.
We would also like to have, we are strongly encouraging teams to do this together because they have common plan and that allows us to best support them versus work in isolation. And Lisa's doing a lot of, and Amanda's doing a lot of like thoughtful behind the scenes thinking of, okay, if it were these two schools and they're both early, we could get them after school the first time together with a vendor for a check-in. And then we could, during job embedded PD, bring non-piloters together with piloters. We could bring the UFly with collaborative and see how it overlaps. So we're doing a lot of logistics right now to figure that all out.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, so just for clarification with some of the language, so the piloting will take place next school year.
Yes.
Part of what I'm a little confused about is then piloting at a greater scale the following year. My understanding was that we would adopt it for the following year.
You're
So,
understanding.
so I'm, okay, so it is not like,
No.
Okay.
Next, the 26-27 school year would be our pilots, and we would be coming to you in April of 27 with a recommendation. At the start of the 27-28 school year, we need to ensure that we have high quality materials aligned to structural literacy and advocacy.
okay, and then and I'm trying to flip between
Yes.
the Garber's reading rope chart because it has the different curriculum and, what it covers. So, I did notice that Southline has the collaborative classroom, which is, I guess, supposed to be comprehensive, but maybe not comprehensive enough. And so UFly might also be necessary. But then you have West Bloomfield, who's doing only EL education, which is the comprehensive, and then Birmingham and Novi are doing arts and letters, which is not the comprehensive, which is the comprehension only.
Mhm.
So neither Novi or Birmingham or West Bloomfield have in addition, like taken on a secondary, or have they?
They have, yes, they have.
Okay.
So, and those different curriculum that are listed across the bottom,
Yeah,
yes, they have. And even,
because it wasn't in the district, it wasn't in the district visit. So I'm just trying to understand why are we why are we in South Lyon now the only ones who?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're not, and we heard arts and letters, definitely, because they have only that top part of the rope.
Okay.
A variety, they're not all necessarily using the same foundational.
Yeah.
But a lot of districts were also looking at a foundational piece because that's such an important factor in PA 146 is
Okay.
that explicit, just phonics only, word study for students, that they were looking at those, and we're looking at that as well to see, do we need that in addition to, or is it going to be enough of that foundational skills targeted within the comprehensive that maybe we wouldn't need UFly? But it was important for us and other districts that we've talked to make sure to move forward and pilot both and to see once you're living it.
But the teachers who are doing the teachers who are gonna be doing the collaborative literacy pilot are not in addition gonna be doing UFly. It's the teachers who are doing the units of study for, right? They're
Yes.
gonna continue doing that. They're gonna be the ones. Okay.
Yes. And then and we will talk more about professional development, but like what Dr. Ricker was saying is that's why we're being really intentional of when we have our job embedded professional development to be bringing those teachers together, as well as teachers who aren't piloting at all, to have the opportunity to see it in action, have conversation around what are we noticing? Are we noticing that it is meeting what are those requirements in the law? Or do we feel that it does have that foundational skill part of the curriculum, but in addition, maybe we do need another little portion, like we have our phonics units of study now, that's just explicitly teaching into that phonics progression for students. So again, it's being thoughtful about like making sure that even though you're just piloting one thing, or maybe not piloting at all, that you are going to be part of the process along the way to hear how all those components are going together.
Any questions?
You mentioned, you said, should we not love it in reference to the collaborative literacy, give away this stuff?
Yeah.
What would that scenario?
Yeah, I've actually already had business offices of another district reach out to me. It's somewhat common. It's happened to me a few times this year where a business office will reach out and say, we're moving beyond this curriculum. We think it has value for students. It's not for us. Sometimes people will sell it. In this case, we would not because it's purchased with grant funds. And so we would reach out, we work with Oakland schools to spread the word, and we would give it to who needs it.
So then what would you do instead? So if you're only piloting one thing and then maybe you don't like that thing,
Yeah.
then what do you use instead? See, it's supposed to be one of the comprehensive or one from each top bottom half of the rope. So then what?
The
I'm just
pilot
trying to work
process,
it out.
yeah, the pilot process would have to determine that. So
But you're not piloting anything else.
at this time, yeah.
Okay. So
So
you'd like to add-
if the lists also have updates this summer too. So if we continue to review the lists and there's something else we want, this is our update as of today. It could change. Neighboring districts have gone through various pilots. We do feel confident that our team really sees their values in it, though. That is not what I would anticipate.
Okay.
Yes, I would not make this recommendation if that were the case.
Well, I mean, there's lots of choices.
Yeah.
right? And our rubric is one of
Yes.
5 or so you said you looked at. So-
Yeah, they're very excited, which is nice to see their commitment to learning something new and taking a risk.
My comment was very similar too, because we are truly only piloting one in the comprehensive list. So it is not, we are not trying to choose between one or the other. We are trying to make sure that this fits everything that we want. If it doesn't, maybe add something to it. That's kind of what I'm reading through. Is that what you have in mind?
I'm not sure what your question is.
Because we have no two different curriculums that we are piloting. We are only piloting one, which is the collaborative literacy pilot.
Yes.
We do have UFly for for the foundational piece, but in fact, collaborative is what you guys think you're piloting all across the board. So the goal is potentially to use that.
At this today,
Yeah.
we think that our team will like collaborative literacy and UFly and want to combine those two things.
Yeah,
It would also be an option, though, to say we would just do collaborative literacy because it is
Right.
considered comprehensive.
so the goal of the pilot is to make sure that it fits our curriculum and our students and maybe see what needs to be added in places that it doesn't fit. Is that what the goal?
The goal of the pilot is to figure out how to work it at scale for all teachers. So
Okay.
we have determined that this fits our value system and has all the components that the state of Michigan outlined. But what we want to know is when we have a close group of teachers with our directs, very close support to roll it out, how does that inform considerations for the next year?
I think maybe the bigger thing, the bigger question that the questions are trying to get to is when we are piloting this and into the future, is it necessary or is it required for us to pilot two things of similar or equal value or not? So and I'm
Right.
not saying what what the answer needs to be, but maybe it's this assumption or idea that if we're gonna pilot two things of equal value
Sure.
and to see which one works or doesn't.
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that that's how our process is laid out and it needs to be. So I think that's
Yeah.
it's the misunderstanding or the question or the.
My interpretation, because originally I kind of had your mindset, like you're gonna have an A and a B and you're choosing between A
Yeah.
and B. But that's not really what's going on here because it's a very, very unique situation. Like rarely has the legislature kind of said,
You
here,
use this.
what you choose from.
Yeah.
So I think that was the point of saying like, all of these have already been through
Yes,
multiple rubrics. Like, we're good with meeting those requirements. So then it comes down to kind of like, okay, all apples are the same there. So like, what do we want? Which is, was the purpose of the rubric that
Yeah.
they worked with. And you see that overwhelmingly, I guess, favorable for one particular curriculum. So then it's like, well, we know it meets the PA 146. And we see this lopsidedness. So then it comes down to like, do we really want to pilot a second when we've got people that are like, I really want to use
they
that.
don't want to.
Yeah.
They're like,
Yeah.
I
So I
said
think
it.
it's
You asked me and I
just
told you.
Yeah,
It's
no,
kind of
Yeah.
a one-off
Yeah.
situation. really.
So the pilot will help us determine how to implement it at
Yeah.
scale.
Yes, and that is our big focus, because what we've learned is implementation really matters.
Yeah.
For, keeping buy-in, and for doing your best. A curriculum in a hand alone is not enough. And we're not unique in this, just so you know, there are other districts with your colleagues who, have piloted to implement, which is what they kind of taught me about, because I originally had thought in Amherst. You'll see though, in just a second, we are going to recommend a different approach for middle school based off of the teachers' voices.
So I look at it as phased implementation, and this is the phase one where we are learning and maybe adapting, and full-scale implementation is the year later. Okay.
Yeah. How much flexibility, in collaborative classroom, talk about high quality fiction and nonfiction texts. How much flexibility is there for teacher and student choice texts?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And that was, as you see, a part of our rubric, and that was a piece that, was also reflected within this curriculum, is that we know the importance of students being exposed to grade level text. Yes, and being able to have rich IDR libraries where students are still given the opportunity to have a voice and choice in books, to be a part of the text in a variety of others for that large volume of reading. So yes, this is something that we saw within this curriculum that maybe wasn't there as much in others. That was really important to our teachers, is for our students to be able to have that choice in text.
Great, thank you.
Last thing to ask, you might bring this up later, is how are you going to pull your special ed teams and your ELD teams?
Yeah, that's a great question.
I might address it later, sorry.
Yeah, so the good thing is our special ed and ELD teams have been with us from the start. They are also very excited about it, because all of the curriculum that we're talking about today makes specific recommendations for like diverse learners. And it is a big part of the curriculum on this list to provide like suggested call outs, like do this if you see that, kind of like an if that. So they have helped with the review thus far. This is tier 1 material, so it won't be what they're implementing, but they will continue to be involved in the professional learning and the observations and the walkthroughs related to what we're seeing. And we have a lot to unpack still of what it means for all the other tiers. We're launching that work in May. Open Schools, they're hosting us they call it a retreat. It's really a full day of work. What it is. Yeah.
That's how we feel too.
And someone's like, it's not. And so we're launching those questions then.
So like tiered support is going to become a topic after that. Okay.
In May, well, we were actually able to self-select our topic, based off of where we stand in PA 146, that is shelf rate. And we are feeling really good about the progress we're making toward our tier 1 pilots, and see a need to turn our eye to that next. So that is what our Troy team will be working on, but each district in May gets to pick their own, like where they're at thing, and have all of the open schools people there to help us.
Very similar to how, if this curriculum supports the learners who need support, similarly, does it support learners who need the challenge?
That is one of the things we're most excited about in this curriculum, is that it does a far better job of teaching foundational skills, vocabulary, grammar. And because it does allow for some choice in it still, but like I would say less choice, but still some choice, we can differentiate what our students do within that choice. So it allows teachers to ratchet up the rigor if needed too.
Okay.
One last thing, assessment, or is that?
Yes, do you mean assessment within this product?
I guess both. Where with them? Like, are you gonna continue using the old assessment? Or are you gonna start moving to things that might be suggested
Yeah.
by the state or required soon? Are you
Yeah.
gonna use the product or is it one and the same? I don't know.
So for assessments in general, so tonight, I know we're just talking tier one tonight, but for assessments in general, we've started learning about that. We've met with some of the vendors. We have another vendor visit in May. So we are definitely thinking about it, but that our focus is on tier one.
Gotcha. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure you keep thinking about it.
Oh, yeah. I'm not sure for sure. Amanda, do you want to talk? Oh, sorry. Rich.
Middle school.
Okay.
Yep, so middle school, so of the list of curriculum that the state has approved, only 5 of those had included 6-8. So what you see on this slide is the results of our scoring and use of rubric. And arts and letters and EL education came out on the top. You can see there is some neck and neck a little bit, and especially around building capacity. Something I do want to point out is HMH and Savvis, those products are anthology textbooks. So that was something our teachers, it's not that they didn't like them at all. They did spend a lot of time looking through them. They just were not comfortable going back to a textbook as,
Sort of
you know,
like a trade book in here.
yes, yeah. So, and a lot of excerpted text rather than novels that go along with those curriculums. So those were pretty much ruled out a little bit quicker because of that. So what we ended up with on the, or I should say before I get to, where we are here, but they had an opportunity at the end of our evening together and reviewing curriculum to complete a form to choose whether we were going to move 1 or 2 forward for piloting. So as you see in these percentage results, arts and letters and EL education were very close. Both of these, as you'll see on the next couple slides explaining, have a lot of what we value in the middle school classroom that they don't want to let go of. The nurturing, the cultivating of an inclusive environment, a lot of those teacher opportunities for teacher responsiveness and feedback. Both of these offer that, but they also bring in some of the rigor and the explicit teaching in areas that our teachers are desiring.
And so for context, the difference between 47% and 41% was 1 vote.
Yes.
So.
Seems like so much more.
At one point when we checked the form, they were exactly the same, and I was like, they're exactly the same, and then later, one outreached the other side. So arts and letters.
All right, so arts and letters is, as you see with the 3 main areas with comprehension, there are consistent models for collaboration in the daily lessons. There's an integrated approach to reading, writing, and language development. So that this is comprehensive where daily, the teaching is going to touch on reading and writing, but also some explicit teaching in word study and morphology. Something else that our teachers really are craving. There's high quality materials. They're very complex and rigorous texts that the students are exposed to in arts and letters, but with a lot of scaffolding to go along with that. Usability, the lessons are 60 minutes, which obviously is ideal for a middle school classroom with clear instructions, customizable slides. There's organized notes. There's a lot of, you know, from what we've observed in the classrooms we visited in other districts, that is very dynamic. It is, I don't want to say it's, you know, like chaos. It's not the right word, but it's very much the high engagement. The kids are really involved and the conversation level is just, it's really high. Especially for what we saw in a K1 and a 4th and 5th grade classroom. It's really impressive. Also with arts and letters, they do have assessments. So the other thing that our teachers wanted to have was something more consistent along the lines of assessment. So there's formative, summative, but they also have reading and fluency assessments that would help teachers to kind of track students where they are throughout the year. Which is something, again, that we are finding is helpful to guide their instruction at the middle school. Teachers feel a little bit anxious about trying to say where they think a child is at a reading level, and this will really help them be able to determine that, but while also listening to them read. And then EL education is, so what really teachers were drawn to with EL education is a strong character ed. It's very IB-ish. If you look at some of the things that, EL education offers, they have a crew curriculum, which, reminded me a bit of the IB learner profile that is built into their lessons in the teaching and learning. But it also has a more nonfiction, so it's heavier on the nonfiction, which again is something our teachers feel is imperative for students. As I mentioned, the character ed and high quality student work. So, demonstrating the craftsmanship and really focusing on the quality of what students are producing. Not necessarily always the quantity, like spending more time to make sure that what they're doing is, producing some real quality writing. Another thing for EL education, I mentioned the crew curriculum, but it also is very strong in UDL. So a lot of what our teachers have been learning the last couple of years and what we've been trying to really build into our tier 2 instruction is through UDL. So that's heavily layered into the EL offering.
Can you just say what UDL is?
So that's under the universal design.
Design language.
So strategies that make learning tasks easy for children who are striving learners to enter the task, but the ceiling high enough that those who are more advanced can also.
I'm sorry, I should.
We can get a little acronym.
Yeah.
Does, do IB curriculum use this EL education?
No,
Okay.
so they're completely, I
Okay,
just,
just
as a
incorporated.
former, IB school, teacher and, what was I called?
Coordinator.
Thank you. That was, that was
Great.
very much, yeah, so IB was very much built into student inquiry, and driving their learning, and that's very similar for EL education. And it also had the learner profile parts and pieces to that as well for the character ed that drove those units. So that just, what EL offers just really reminds me of that quite a bit.
So the data for our middle school pilots is different. We basically have a tie and of what the literacy leadership team thinks. So for middle school, we'll be moving forward with 2 pilots to inform the selection between A versus B. So arts and letters versus EL education. We do believe with time and wanting to not disrupt the continuum of our kids' learning, that unfortunately these won't be the same teachers doing both products. It also is double the costs when you do that too. So we will have a group of teachers doing arts and letters and a group of teachers doing EL education. Just like with elementary, we'll be working hard with job embedded PD subs to get those groups together at times too, creating a tool that allows them to objectively monitor for the things we said we value too, and like look for qualitative signs of it. We know both of these products have strong research for academic outcomes according to the state's vetting. And we also want to continue to monitor them for our values as well in that process. That's something that we're just getting ready to begin with Oakland schools too, because they've done a lot of work with other districts of how do you support an objective monitoring between those two things, because we recognize that people will like what they invest themselves in. And so we've been very clear with our pilots that you will be piloting for the sake of providing feedback of what is going well, and for a lot, you have to be very open to people coming into your room to see and to be in like a test between the 2 rooms. We'll be pulling kids to hear about their experience, and that data will be what drives the decision. That's kind of a hard thing, but we've been clear about that up front.
David, how do you select which classrooms are going to be piloting which?
Yeah, great
Is it
question.
been mixed in each school?
We haven't done that yet, but what our intention is that we want each school to have both products so that they have ease of access to get into each other. And we want the same grade level of teachers to do the same product so that kids have the same experience, and then they can co-plan as well too. But we think it's important to try to get each product into each school for ease of getting groups of teachers together, and then the support of your teammate, and so that literacy coach can support as well together.
Now, David, if you look at these 2, the arts and letters is in the comprehension section of this Scarborough or
Yes.
reading row versus the EL is in the comprehensive, which contains both the foundational and the comprehension. By picking these 2, I mean, you're kind of comparing 2 different things. Is that okay? Because middle schoolers already have the foundational piece, you think?
So, yeah, so the graphic we showed you that listed all the different ways you could be quite qualified or explained. That is for the K-5 list.
Okay,
And the K-5 list suggests needing that foundational and that language building.
okay.
It is a different game in middle school because they assume an MTSS system should handle children who don't have basic phonics satisfied. So all of the middle school products we looked at that were from companies that had approved elementary products, and that's a lot to follow, they are aligned to the science of reading. So things that they do that this decisions that these curriculum make that align them to the science of reading. So really that designation doesn't matter for middle school. So they both heavily teach morphology. They explicitly teach vocabulary, both in the beginning and then embedded, and assess for it too. So they have a scope and sequence of skills as well too.
And just to come back to the, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was just gonna come back to the piloting question. We did seek out, interest in piloting and who would want to do that. And it was really an awesome outcome because we have 20 teachers right now
Yeah.
that are interested. I know we're getting to it too, but, of those 20, and just to kind of put it in perspective, for middle school at the 4 buildings, we're about 50 teachers total in ELA that sometimes include, like, that will also include our special ed and ELD. So 20 teachers is a great number, but also representative of all grade levels. So we don't have to like pull
And
certain grades to
tap
do
people,
that.
but we still might, you never know, might miss some tapping. So some other details about the pilots, even though we are just beginning this part. So we just got to the point of being comfortable with what is the thing, what are the pilots, and how will we fund them, and who's interested. Up next, we're going to work to make sure we have representation of both pilots with both products for middle and then with both options in elementary. We're also going to be making sure that people pilot in teams, as we said a few times. We're looking for meaningful ways to include our special education and ELD staff as well. Thankfully, they have asked to be included too. So, you know, they have such complex roles, but they have been a part of this team and they have put their names in. They said, I know this is tier 1, but I want to like plan alongside. I want to like, you know, if I'm co-teaching next year in my assignment, I want to be involved. So we're working through those logistics. District supports, we've been telling our team that in August, there will be a vendor day where you learn what the thing is, learn more about science of reading and how it aligns to it. And then we've been saying you'll get some time to digest. And then in October, at the end of October, I believe, that is when you will leave that time, a district PD day, feeling like you're ready to teach the first unit. Some of the products call it the first module. There's a lot of new language to learn. Because we want them to walk away feeling like I'm ready to actually teach this and to do that in a carefully supported way with us. There will be an immense amount of ongoing vendor support and support from us. All of these vendors have super impressive rollouts. They've had to do that because Michigan is in a frenzy to make these changes. So they like, once you move past the initial person, they're like, I'm now moving to the implementation team. Like there are teams that support us. And they're upfront about their needs as well too, because it is of a mutual interest that their products work well in the hands of children. So they want to meet with our student teachers after school. So that's something we're budgeting for internally. They want to be involved during walkthroughs. They want to be involved with collaborative problem solving, planning. It will definitely be a collaborative process. Trying to think what else here. So we've talked to our teachers about how a lot of the feedback will require being open to lots of visitors to gather that data. Their own evaluations as piloting staff, like what is their experience? Are the values we saw in print happening in theory once you do it? That's a huge question. And getting student and community feedback of those who are in those pilots. Like what do you actually feel in the sense? Is it doing well? Do you wish it did? Is there anything that must change? So there's a lot going on K-8. We've only talked about tier 1 pilots right now. And there are so many other parts of PA 146. But what we wanted to kind of end with is that the exciting part is that we're working toward K-8 cohesion, toward a very important change. And in many ways, engulfing the middle school at the same time is an exciting opportunity and will make us, it's just a great opportunity for alignment. And our educators who have been in the literacy leadership team are excited. They're open and they're ready to see how this works. I know how busy their lives are and that there are so many other complexities of PA 146 that we'll also have to work with them through. So to have such willing teachers with their voice at the table really excites us. We're excited that all of these pilots connect to our vision and values too, and that the state has done their due diligence of looking at the foundational parts for us, that they all teach the Michigan standards, and that they align to PA 146 and the science of reading. It's been a lot of work, but we feel there's a lot of opportunity here to do best for our kids. Some timelines that are coming up too, just for you all to know, is that on May 11th, we're excited to host a community night here in the services building. We'll be updating our community on our process so far leading up to pilots. And we'll be here to answer questions. We do have some samples of the materials that they're going to be free to see. And we'll be there to take questions as needed too and feedback. And then we've previewed those August and October collaborations with vendors. We think generally November and March are when the pilots will be happening. We will be working with those vendors to determine though when that exactly is, what unit it replaces. In the next 2 weeks, we'll be working through who the people are, when it is, what are the units, and then thinking about the PD from that. And then we hope to be back in a year from here to tell you what we're excited to do at scale.
I still had some 6A questions, I thought.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so, we were talking about K-5 and the collaborative classroom, that kind of seemed to hit all of the things that were really important to us as a district. It's quite possible that for 6 to 8, arts and letters and EL education don't necessarily. So, maybe in terms of, and as a board, we did get an email and some feedback, and I haven't reviewed the material, so I can't, speak to it personally, but, some feedback that, some of the units, for example, in arts and letters might be, very heavily skewed to, going back to 14th century Europe, and where all of the reading is through that lens, and that is not our, that is not our community or the time that we live in.
Sure.
So, I don't need an answer now, but I have said from now on, I will ask when anything is presented to us as a board, what are we gaining? What are we losing? And the part, if we are losing something, how we're gonna rectify that ahead of time. So if, I don't know, of the two, which the team will recommend. But if there are things in there, that are missing in terms of what we as a district need and value for our community, how do we rectify that going forward? So that way we're not in a situation 2 or 3 years from now where we're having to, fix some things, right? Because even with something, and I know we're gonna get to the math after this, but some of the issues we've identified with the math were known even 3 years ago, that we were gonna have this issue of fluency with the new curriculum, and it was not done. The rectification of that missing piece was not taken care of from the get-go. So I wanna know, especially when you guys come back next April, what are we gaining? What are we losing? The part that we're losing, how is that gonna be taken care of?
Yeah, we'll be happy to
Yeah.
report on that. We've talked a lot about that internally as a team. What does this allow us to gain? And if there is a value that we don't think is as strong, what decisions do we make as a Troy team? So
Yeah.
we'll be working through it.
My question is very similar to that is, do you have, what kind of assessments or what kind of data are you trying to gather to determine which one's better? So you probably should identify those ahead as well, to know, to be more data driven, I guess.
Yeah, so in a pilot of several months, it is pretty hard to get a statistically significant hard number difference. And we will likely be piloting units that have different objectives, different standards, different end products. So what we're working on with Oakland schools is like a rubric tool for identifying what do we say were our values, what will be the look fors for it, and helping us collect qualitative feedback for that, so that we can have some.
Okay.
We've had some initial discussions. That's all work we are ready to begin and have not done yet because we have been so busy with this, to be honest. We are also excited to work with them because they said they have some experience working with districts too, of creating external tools that are curriculum agnostic too, that just unpack how well is the standard achieved that this unit was meant to do too. And like looking at that in an objective way versus just the way that the vendor provides too. So those are some next steps we have with Oakland schools.
Okay, so Oakland Schools is actually working with you for even 6 to 8 as well?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Because that's not
we bonded
something
them all.
that,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I just have one point of advocacy and just something to sort of plant a seed. Since we've identified one of our biggest achievement gaps is in our students with learning disabilities, our special education students and our ELs, right?
Yeah.
So I heard you mention earlier, you want to create a meaningful opportunity for the EL folks and the special ed folks to
Yeah.
participate. I would stress that that needs to be more than meaningful, like robust, because that is the gap that is proving most persistently difficult to close across the board. And that's where I think we would expect a higher return on investment, if you will. So in an effort to do that, I think you have to advocate. Advocate that you deeply engage your special ed folks so that you're even, as you said, like people are out of the woodworks, want to pilot. Well, fabulous. Make sure you find the people that are co-teaching, so that they get it, and then they get the materials too, so that it's like useful for them to do. So that we can start to look at that paired with, let's say, like you mentioned, data, goals to say, like, is this action moving the needle for these students? Knowing that that is a group that we are, both of those groups really, we're very focused on. The big, frankly, big and ugly gaps that we persistently have with them for achievement. So just put it out there. So
Appreciate it.
Any other questions? I have one comment with the data chart that you have, where you showed, the different distribution. I think it was like English language learners and, economically disadvantaged chart because between 6th and 8th grade. I think you had one thing I always hear is even though you see the gap increasing between the two, you also notice the percentage of EL kids reduces. So even though the gap increases, because if there are, let's say, 15% of our elementary kids who are in EL, but by the time they come to middle school, you may only have 6 or 7% of our kids EL. I'm just giving an example. So showing that percentage in that chart may help also explain that the gap is higher because now they are become general students and not in EL anymore. So you don't have as many similar with special needs as well, having that percentage.
A valid point, Dr. Michalski and I were talking about just last week that when you look at our formerly limited English population plus current, it's about 39.1%. It is 39.1% of Troy kids as of last year. And sometimes we forget to include those who have exited the program as a symptom of success too.
Yeah, exiting the program is a symptom of success, and now they are in the general, and all of a sudden our EL number looks bad because as a percentage.
Those who did not exit.
Exactly.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The next thing, guys, not a minute break? I could use it. Okay.
How long did it?
5-minute break. Anusha, you can go ahead and address the board now, but for the future, for everybody, we only usually have one public comment time, and especially at the workshop, and that happens at the beginning. So I don't want to make it as an exception, but we are making an exception for you.
Thank you so much. Hello to our board. My name's Anusha. I'm here representing American Citizens for Justice. And I'm here speaking on middle school math. So I'm sure you've seen and heard the statistics about students being bored in class, not feeling challenged. But I'd also just like to mention a personal anecdote of mine. So in my free time through the Detroit Economic Club, I'm also a Career Readiness Academy mentor at IA East. And I had the privilege of being able to tutor many bright students that have a great future ahead of them. And as you know, Audra and Vital, you know the caliber of the students there. And when I asked them, like, how did they get prepared to come to IA? What prepared them for the exam? A lot of them will say the curriculum of their middle school is what made the difference. If you want the students to be competitive, and you would have to ensure that they have individual attention according to their skills. And kids should not be punished for getting ahead and according to whatever skills they're at. Troy is an acclaimed district, and unfortunately, 4% of families have left already to go to another district. And this is a chance to restore Troy's status and glory to what it originally was. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will return back to our regular agenda. With that lost right now. Hold on, give me a second. Yeah. Okay, middle school math. It's my- Can you separate it, please? All right. Yeah, we need to separate.
Hi, Board of Education. Great to see you all. I thought maybe what I could start with before we jump into middle school math is Mr. Griffin, just because we were just talking about Mr. Griffin just recently shared with us that the incoming freshman class for IA that has taken the math assessment is the highest scoring Troy School District 8th grade class in math assessments for placement at IA East. There was an increase of 53% of our kids qualifying to be put into the math 3 class. So it's the highest tested class going in. So he wanted to share that. He kind of shared it back with us when he was thinking about our 8th graders as they're coming up and wanted to just share with us like their status and what they're looking at that. So I thought it would be an interesting piece for you. But I'm going to pick up where we left off the last time we were here just 3 weeks ago. We had a conversation where we had collected some survey feedback that had come right out of spring break. And we had not had an opportunity to jump directly into that data because it was really just a few days after spring break. So we committed to coming back with some additional information on the parent survey, the student survey, and then we had some teacher listening sessions. So I'll just jump into a few slides. Again, I apologize. I know this wasn't sent out to you ahead of time, so I won't race through them. I'll take a little time. And then these will all be shared with you following. Our parent survey response, we had 408 total parents respond. So we actually had about 10 parents respond in the interim between the time we talked to you and the time we closed out the survey. Of those 408 responses, we only had open-ended feedback in 214 parents responded to feedback on the curriculum and 152 parents gave some feedback on the math progression. All the rest of those were blank. So I just wanted you to know when you look at the N, some parents just went in and took the multiple choice and didn't provide any feedback on the open-ended response.
But that is what percent? That's the 14%.
That's the 14% of the middle school parents, right? So
not a very.
no, so 86% of our parents at the middle level did not respond to the survey. One of the parent themes that came forward with 93 responses was a desire for more practice problems, more homework, and more parent-friendly resources to use at home. I think this is consistent with conversations that we've been having up until now, and you can see just a few quotes picked there that speak to that. Another parent theme that came forward was a desire for physical textbooks or more paper and pencil work, less technology and screen time. That's something that we've had conversations about, and all of our IM math classes do have workbooks, but not all of those workbooks are actually transitioning home. And that's something that David and I learned a little bit more about during our focus groups. Another parent theme was a desire for more rigor, earlier honors tracks, and an optional opportunity for acceleration. So those were really kind of the 3 areas for parents from the themes and the open-ended responses. As we shared last time, we had about 2,000 students who responded and what they enjoy about math class. Many of them stated the peer collaboration and those social interactions. They enjoy the challenging and learning, they enjoy being challenged and the new learning concepts.
and they enjoy their supportive and engaging teachers. I really like that last one. The way my teacher explains how kind of cool she is.
That's actually high praise.
That's right, that's right. So what changes would you recommend? The top choice or feedback was none, nothing, or IDK. And then you can see pacing. So we had students who certainly spoke up about pacing with the curriculum, which we did hear some from our teachers as well. And then clear materials, explanations, and instructions. I thought what was really interesting is there's some feedback in there that talks about how the workbook and then the teacher notes do not line up. And so when they're going back to reference, it seems that there's some confusion there. So that's something we need to dig into a little bit. And then over the course of the last 2 weeks, David and I have had an opportunity to go to each one of our 4 middle schools to engage in conversation with our middle school staff. One of the things that we talked about on the 7th was the teacher feedback that we got. We had 21 teachers respond, and we had quite a mixed bag of feedback from our teachers. So we wanted to dig in and understand a little bit more about how they felt. We had 27 of our 28 math teachers participate in those sessions, those listening sessions with us. And the one that didn't participate wasn't there because he was coaching baseball. So they all were very happy to come to that table to have a conversation. David and I were there, as well as Kate Rainey and then Jordan Dennis. Dr. Dennis took all of our notes so that he could really be listening while we were focused on facilitating the conversation. The majority of those conversations went over an hour and a half and into 2 hours. So there was a lot for us to unpack. We structured the conversation around 3 particular areas. First, we focused on curriculum, specifically IM. Then we transitioned to talk about our math course progression. And then the third thing that we asked them to think about was the timeline for implementation of the work to come. So the next 4 slides are dense slides, and we'll spend a little time on each one of them. What we did was we thought it would be helpful for you to understand the tone and tenor of feedback at each one of our 4 buildings before we summarized them. So they are listed as middle schools A, B, C, and D. They're not listed by name. We have very small math departments of 4 to 5 teachers. I think one of the things that's really important is that we continue to provide safe spaces for our teachers to share their thoughts. So we coded them just by letter. So at middle school A, our teachers expressed that there is no perfect curriculum, as we were talking about IM, but that they need additional time as a staff to work together and collaborate to ensure the curriculum meets the needs of our TSC students. The teachers expressed the desire to continue IM, but they stated that it needs additional practice problems and assessments that either come from the publisher or are directly aligned with the curriculum itself. Our 6th grade teachers expressed that there was room for more rigor in 6th grade curriculum and that some of the material may be review with elementary 5 and could be cut. Teachers expressed that there's too much content in 8th grade math and that students are skimming over important pre-algebra content in the current Honors Algebra 1 course. So actually that statement should probably read, there's too much content in the combined 8th grade math Honors Algebra 1 course. Regarding math progression, the majority of the teachers expressed that the current progression model is not working well, specifically the 8th grade math Honors Algebra 1 combination. However, teachers also expressed strong concerns about the idea of sorting students at the 6th grade level. Teachers wondered if a condensed IM Math 6-7 could be an appropriate Tier 1 curriculum for all incoming 6th graders. And teachers expressed a strong desire for vertical alignment between elementary, middle, and high school math to ensure a smooth progression for our TSD students. At middle school B, when talking about the curriculum, our teachers felt that IM did a good job building conceptual knowledge. The activities were engaging and connected to real life, but that there are insufficient materials. They wanted to maintain IM, but with more support. Teachers felt that parents were struggling since workbooks do not go home and parents do not know how to support their students without clear directions or more at-home materials. Teachers expressed that the pacing of the course is intense at times and that the amount of reading comprehension needed to access the content could be a barrier to some students. Our 8th grade teachers stated that Math 8 and Algebra 1 content within a single course is a major challenge. The pacing is too fast and some students in Algebra 1 need more time with the content. When reflecting on the math progression, they shared that the majority of teachers expressed that the current progression model needs some change. There is interest in exploring the Math 6-7 and Math 7-8 curriculum. Some teachers expressed that the current skill gap between students enrolled in Math 6 or students enrolled in Math 7 is too large to bridge in the current structure, and it's impacting their instruction. Some teachers expressed hesitancy to go to the old system of selecting fifth graders for honors. At our third middle school, when thinking about the curriculum, teachers shared some eighth grade and honors algebra 1 teachers expressed that the current system of IM was not the right selection for the district's math curriculum and felt that students were missing essential content that was previously covered with Big Ideas Math. Teachers felt that Honors Algebra 1 course was a completely different experience than the high school Algebra 1 course due to the eighth grade math content within it. Some teachers wanted to try IM Algebra 1 without eighth grade content in it. Some wanted to transition back to the Big Ideas Algebra 1. 6th and 7th grade teachers at this building expressed a more positive view of the IM curriculum, but were concerned about the math curriculum being scripted for teachers and word heavy for students. When thinking about the math progression, the majority of teachers expressed that the Algebra 1 course needed to be adjusted as soon as possible, and that a Math 6-7 and Math 7-8 course should be offered again. 8th grade honors math teachers felt that an immediate change was necessary. Some teachers were hesitant to change everything and did not want to rush through decisions. Some teachers shared that parents have expressed positive experiences for their students in Math 7 because there is not sorting. And then at our fourth middle school, related to curriculum and resources, teachers felt that the IM curriculum was a good choice, but not perfect. I see students thriving in problem-based approach. Math 8 sometimes needs a lot of supplemental support because engaging with the content can sometimes be out of their reach, students' reach. 6th and 7th grade teachers felt that many of the units were an improvement from Big Ideas, but it can be difficult to differentiate within IM Math. Reading level was noted as a potential barrier to access. Teachers reported that parents mentioned not having enough at-home practice and would like concrete resources like a textbook. Related to math progression, teachers expressed that having Math 6 and Math 6-7 again may allow them to build confidence of struggling math students and provide them with more individualized attention. Teachers expressed a need to separate out the 8th grade content from Algebra 1 via a 6-7 and 7-8 track. We're trying to teach students all the best parts of Math 8 and keep all the best parts of Algebra 1. Many of the students currently in the course cannot keep up. So I'm sure you can hear there were some commonalities. There were also some outliers. So we tried to gather for you the through lines in that teacher feedback. So we felt that one of the through lines was affirmation of IM as our Tier 1 curriculum. We heard often that IM is not perfect and that it needs additional resources. But we also heard from our teachers that they feel it's too soon to walk away from this curriculum. We felt that another through line was vertical alignment from 5th grade to 8th grade, that our teachers really want to be able to explore the alignment and potential repetition of learning targets for students in grades 5 and 6. Many of our 6th grade teachers did share with us that since the elementary has transitioned to Bridges, that the Bridges 5 is a rigorous program, and they believe that for many of our students in 6, it's a repetition, the beginning of the year in particular, there's quite a bit of repetition. So they want to really look at what that looks like between the two. Our teachers spoke about a wide range of skills and abilities in our Math 6 and our Math 7 courses, which lead us to think about exploring the impact of an accelerated pathway, potentially beginning in grade 6. Our Honors Algebra 1 structure, which currently includes Math 8, is clearly challenging for all of our teachers. We need to explore different ways to provide instruction for Math 8 content prior to Algebra 1. We need to work on aligning our middle school Algebra 1 course with the high school course offering. We know that another through line, which has been consistent not only from our teachers, but from feedback from all, is that resources for at-home practice and parent support needs to be developed. We need to find a suitable resource for math practice aligned to the IM units and to create parent resources for at-home support. And then finally, our teachers were very clear on their continued desire to collaborate more on the IM curriculum across grade level in particular. So I do want to remind this board, when we went through the implementation in adoption in 2023, we had some pretty specific goals in why we made the changes that we made. We wanted to improve our tier 1 instruction for all students. We knew in 2023, we were not serving all students in the district at middle school math at the optimal, in an optimal way. We wanted to align our math instruction with the district vision, which was crafted based on feedback from best practices in the field to create students as doers of math, to explore task-based mathematics, and to build fluency through conceptual understanding. We also had a goal to increase access to high levels of math and honors level math. As we reflected on the program that existed before 2023, we knew we had to build transparency and openness and opportunities for all students. Our system of math prior to 2023 was not transparent for advancement in supporting all students. We knew that, and that's something that we have to remember as we continue to move forward. What we've learned along the way is that some of our families do not feel heard and valued right now with the system that we have in place. We've also learned that the shift to task-based instruction is a substantial change that requires ongoing support and opportunities for teachers to collaborate. We know that families need more concrete materials at home, and we know that our students need more practice in skills and fluency outside of the story problems that are what really make up IM math. Over the last almost 3 years, we've had some pretty significant celebrations. We have a higher percentage of students enrolled in honors and accelerated math in 8th and 9th grade today than before 2024. I would say than maybe ever before in the Troy School District, but I don't have the data for all of time. But we know that it has increased. We know that our middle school students have shown consistent improvements in MSTEP over the last 3 years. Specifically, we have seen increases in the advanced performance band, and we've seen reductions in the not proficient performance band as our students transition from 6th to 7th grade. And 93% of our middle school students self-report that they feel they can be good at math. And if nothing else, when you have 93% of middle school kids telling you something, that's pretty incredible. So what are our recommendations for next steps? So taking all of our survey data, everything that all of our listening sessions, what might we put in place? We're recommending that we create an Honors Algebra 1 work group to address concerns about content overload in Honors Algebra 1 and Math 8, the combination, beginning this summer. We'd like to explore summer learning modules, design some fall assessments for student feedback, communicate clearly with our families, and continue the work group through the 26-27 school year. We believe there are ways for us to be able to provide instruction and support around some key concepts of 8th grade math that don't require us taking up so much time in Honors Algebra 1. We know we cannot fix it for the fall, but we can certainly make some progress to be able to alleviate some of that burden. Currently, our Honors Algebra 1 class spends about a quarter on Math 8 standards. So then they're using 3/4 to teach Algebra 1. So if we can reduce the amount of time that they have to spend on those 8th grade standards, it'll be a win, and we can continue to work at that. We'd like to recommend that we create or purchase resources for at-home learning and support this summer by identifying resources for additional at-home practice and assessments that align with IM units and are implemented across the building. We'd also like to create a parent resource bank that is housed in a common location. The last time we were together, we talked a little bit about Delta Math. We're not 100% certain that Delta Math is the right 6-8 tool, but we're going to explore that and other tools. It doesn't have to be Delta Math, so we want to bring a group of middle school teachers together to look at that. We're recommending that we begin vertical alignment this summer, establishing a work group to explore alignment specifically between 5th grade learning targets and 6th grade learning targets. We're recommending that we pilot accelerated Math 6-7 for the fall of 2026. In order to do this, we would be establishing a cohort of Math 6 and Math 6-7 teachers to begin training over the summer. We would develop materials to share with parents beginning next week. We have not yet had our 5th grade incoming 6th grade parent nights. Those are next week. So we would be able to communicate with our families that this is something that would be available to them. We would maintain our test out structure for Math 6. So for students who are currently in 5th grade, who are right now have prepared and are planning to try to test out of Math 6, they would still have that opportunity and they could go into Math 7. And we would identify an opt-in structure for accelerated 6-7. So it would be a family choice for students as they are thinking about their sixth grade experience for math 6-7. It's important to know that, and I hope that you saw over the 4 slides, that there is quite a bit of in our teacher feedback. There are a lot of concerns about the idea of sorting sixth graders and what that can look like, because the system that we had before did not serve our kids well. And so there are a lot of pieces that we need to work through as an organization and commit to in order to uphold what we believe deeply in. And then this is my last slide, the last recommended steps are ongoing work for 26-27. We'd like to spend time exploring and identifying on-ramps and off-ramps for all students. So by on-ramps and off-ramps, I mean the opportunity for students to be able to move between levels of classes if and when they're ready, if they're ready to go on and try something new, or if they need some support and they want to come back. One of the challenges of our former system was it was very rigid with not a lot of opportunity for students. We'd like to establish grade level cohorts for collaboration and learning with regular meetings throughout next school year. And then our work throughout the 26-27 school year would be to affirm our pilot implementation, criticize and affirm it, and then to look at our next steps for grades 7 and 8. That would then put us to a formal board recommendation in the spring of 27 on whether we would move forward affirming our pilot, and then what that would mean for 7 and 8 at that time. I'm sure you have some questions. I'd be happy to answer them, do my best.
Would your plan be to try to pilot the accelerated math in all middle schools, or just the one that had the feedback?
It's a great question. So David and I actually had that conversation. Every room of teachers asked us that question, because we asked them directly. We asked them a little bit about progression. We asked them about curriculum. Then we asked them about progression in general. Then we asked them specifically about 6-7. And we just said, would you be interested in taking on this challenge? What might this look like? And we made it really clear that this is a district-wide pilot. If we pilot it, it happens at all of our buildings, and it's available to all sixth grade children who are interested in pursuing this. In our schools, depending on the school, historically we had between 60 and 40% of students in honors math, depending on the school. So we anticipate 60%-ish with an open option for our students to be in that. That we would have that many students. So even though we have teachers who are hesitant in the process, and there is especially in our 6th and 7th grade teachers, there is a lot of hesitancy because this is very fast. And they have asked about time to work through it. What might it look like? How might we get there? But I do believe that in every one of our buildings, we would have teachers willing to take on that challenge, because they want opportunities for their kids, but they also want to be able to support where the district is going. So no one's going to tell us no. I think that it's just how we go through that implementation together. So all of our schools.
And how do you make decisions based on the number of teachers and the number of students, who gets in and who doesn't?
I think one of the things that came from the conversations that we had was there's a very clear sense of team and collaboration in those buildings. And so for many of our teachers, I would imagine there would be 2 in each of our buildings who would probably teach both 6 and 6-7, if possible. And we would work with teachers, knowing our principals, they would ask who's interested. And then then they would go and knock on doors and say, hey, we need one more. Are you willing to do that? There will be, and just to lay all of it out for the board, a pilot that we start at this point in the year will require an investment on behalf of the district over the course of this summer. Right? We have 5 weeks of school. And so we need to be able to bring teachers in so that they have time over the summer to collaborate and learn and go through the tools and resources. So we'll have to work through that. And that's all something we can work through. It's just going to take some time for us to get there.
No, I just want to say I support the recommendation. I think it meets our kids where they're at. One of the, just reading through the feedback, like the raw feedback, there was a sense of like, it's really challenging to meet such a wide range of learners within one classroom. I think this will not just meet the advanced learners, but I think it's also going to help our kids that are having more challenges, because you have a teacher that is now able to focus and have more time to work with those particular students. With a pilot, I'm glad to hear how you're proposing to set that up, that it's district-wide and that it's access to all. I think that limiting it would be, in my opinion, I could not support that. I also think it's important to take a look at, because it is opt-in. Our fifth grade have some input, because sometimes it can be issues with, language barriers or other issues that a parent might not advocate for that. So I think we need to make sure that our teachers and elementary principals work together to identify kids that really could benefit from that challenge. That obviously there's a lot of kind of work to be done on the top end as well.
Yeah.
I think doing a pilot starting this fall, while it's fast, I think it helps inform the upper eighth grade honors algebra teachers kind of where we're going and what's coming. So, because they need to know that to help set up structures to plan in the future. So, while I acknowledge it's a quick timeline, I think that it's going to help with the overall planning process for that kind of conundrum that seems to be, consistent thorn right now across buildings. Sure. Yeah.
No, thank you. You can go first. Okay. You want to go first? She wants to go last, so.
So, first, I want to applaud you for hearing hard feedback. I know the decisions that I wasn't on the board, obviously, in 2023 when the decisions were made. And that it takes guts to hear open feedback, and it takes real bravery on the part of our teachers to look their administrators in the face and be like, hey, this isn't working for us and for kids. We heard it from parents, we heard it from teachers, we heard it from kids.
I'd be careful saying that. That's a very broad brush, because it is working for some people, it's not working for others. So I would just be careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
I appreciate that. I'll phrase my statement to say it's not working for everyone.
Good.
Fair?
Great.
Okay. And I appreciate you respectfully approaching that with me, because I think that it's honestly really hard for me to sit here and talk about this, because I wasn't there when the decision was made. And I know that most of the people in this room that were voted for it to be made. I get it. I know where I'm sitting. And I am glad that we can have respectful discourse, and I hope that we can continue to do that. As I was saying, either way, it's brave. And I'm proud of that work that you've been doing and that reflective piece as a parent of an incoming middle school kid who may want that challenge, and who wouldn't have obviously had it before. I appreciate the opportunity to get started, because when you start, you have to start sometime. You can wait a year or 2 or 5 or never, but starting, it kind of prompts you along. And I agree with you, Audrey, that it will hopefully help to inform, because you're going to get sort of stuck in the middle. I think what I suspect is going to happen, not my role at all, but you're going to work on the 6-7 thing, and then and the 8th grade and algebra thing, then you're going to go, wait, something's going on here. I assume you mean the 6-7 option is going to be an IM purchase as well. Okay, all right, I thought so.
It would be accelerated 6. IM has their own structure,
Yeah.
and it's called accelerated 6-7.
Got it. So it'll be that. So
would
it's
be-
not like it's a
That's right.
other thing. I can certainly also speak from the parent angle of really hoping, based on what I've heard, like that, yes, there are some more robust supports at home for that. And also appreciate the teachers' feedback around the need for continued collaboration. I think that that is a huge piece of, sort of new frontier in secondary, right? It's not just we go in our classrooms and we teach our preps and forget the rest. And it's really great to see our teachers saying that they want it. Usually they're like, "Oh, another meeting, no thanks." So it's a really a powerful and positive thing. So I'm glad we're doing it. The recommendation is to do it sooner rather than later. To hear the needs of all groups and all kids. My only lingering question would be around assessment, but I don't know that you got that yet. It's okay. Yeah.
It's hot off the press. I
Just to
think.
say like, all right, cool, so we're gonna do all this. Can we look at it from a database standpoint to be like,
Okay.
did it move the needle? Does it say what you think is that it might help our kids that are struggling more? I don't know, right? I mean, we don't know. We won't know with autopsy data, right? MSTEP is not going to tell us till too late, probably, if it didn't or did help. But like whatever that might look like during the school year assessment will be key. So I know it's probably not a well-developed concept, but sure, bravo, let's go there too.
Thank you. Anything else? Stephanie, good?
Yeah.
Okay, Ms. Potts?
Well, I'm very, very happy to hear that the teachers weren't just saying like crash it all down and start over again, because that would have been alarming. It's good to see that teachers are supportive, and I really commend you on doing all this hard work, because I know this was not easy. I think in order to support our kids and to meet our goals as a district and as a board, we have to have our teachers on board, because they're the boots on the ground. They're the ones that are sitting shoulder to shoulder with our kids. So when we say kids first, it means kids first, but it also means that we have to support the teachers who are implementing all of these things for our kids to keep our kids first. So hearing their feedback is very, I'm very happy that they were as honest as they were, that it is working, that they're not just, this is wonderful, everything is great. And they were willing to share some hard feedback. It's kind of hard to hear. But I'm glad there's a plan. That sounds like a great plan. I think we're fulfilling our promise to always move our kids forward. So I think this is a good plan. I think this is good.
Do you want me to go first or you?
I,
Sorry.
well, no, you guys go. I didn't make comments. I just asked questions.
Oh, okay. Do you want to go ahead and do that?
I support, again, kudos to you and the teachers. I do think, two things. One is we need to be very careful on those on and off ramps. Again, if there's one thing, we may have not, fine-tuned this, but the whole objective was equity, opportunity, and math. And so it looks like we may have achieved that on one end and maybe not done it right on the higher end. And so we have to make sure we're getting that balance, because which is why I don't support just, let's go back to sixth grade honors. Let's go back to sorting kids at fifth grade. Because I don't think that serves kids well. But to have an accelerated path, for kids that need that path, and then just straighten out, the cadence of what's taught in eighth grade. Those are high priorities. One thing I would be interested in, only because I'm very cognizant of the fact that we have an $11 million deficit, is what do we think this will cost us? And then when we get in the room as a board and start making trade-offs, figure out what we're going to trade off, in order to do this. But, I do think that, I support, if our teachers are willing to do this, then it is the right thing to move forward. So I would support this, but I don't know if we have to vote on this or not, but
Yeah.
I would like to see the dollars associated with this as well, because we will have to make some more trade-offs.
Just to piggyback on what said Nancy with that on off ramp. Just like, that equity piece, like
if a kid wants to take it, the kid takes it, like, and also trying to work hard to identify maybe kids that should be in it, that haven't been identified, that on and off ramp, like what we did before didn't work either in trying to provide on and off ramps. Like, it can't cost money. It can't be in the summer. We have to design ways that are accessible to all kids for that. So that's gonna take some creative thinking. And then also like with our master schedules at the middle school, being able to schedule appropriately so you can have movement within the year without blowing up a kid's schedule. So, yeah.
Cause that costs money too.
Yeah.
Money point, right?
All right, you said you wanted to go next. Do you want me to go first, or would you like to finish up?
Oh, no,
Go.
yeah, yeah, I'm fine with the proposed schedule. I think, what I would worry about long-term is that we will just return to the old system. And what I saw from most of the teachers is, one, they were leery about going back to the sorting after fifth grade. And there had been some suggestion in, I think it was at the NASB conference last year at the Advocacy Institute. There are districts that instead of opting in have an opt-out. And so every kid gets put into the math 6, 7. And it's really only those that are not, because I don't see how we don't go back to the fifth grade teacher making recommendations. Lots of parents may not feel comfortable if they have to make that choice. They may hold their kid back. It's anecdotal data, but I talked to lots of moms, and years back, lots of kids didn't get recommended for accelerated math. And so their parents didn't put them in accelerated math. And every once in a while you get a stubborn parent and be like, no, I actually think my kid can do this. I don't know why the fifth grade teacher doesn't. And so I think that is my concern, because we have made gains. The MSIP data shows that we have. I'm still interested to see the PSA, PSA data that we'll get in the fall. The fact that you have the IA's principal saying that this cohort of kids had the highest math results, it's probably because you had the highest number of kids taking Algebra 1 in 8th grade. And so I'm not for or against having an accelerated path, but I think it is not going to be easy to go back to that accelerated path and not fall back into the old patterns. Because somebody in fifth grade, at the end of fifth grade, is going to have to make a recommendation and make a decision. And yeah, you can have those on and off ramps, but if you then again in Algebra 1 honors have kids who have already done Math 8 and kids who have not, then again, you're gonna have a bunch of kids in a classroom where some have had the experience and some not, and the teachers are still gonna have to deal with. So, I don't know how we do it, but if 4 years from now or 5 years from now, we go back to what we had and the number of kids taking Algebra 1 has dipped back down, then that is not okay.
Okay.
So I don't, I'm sure there is a way to do this, but I think a lot of the teachers expressed concern with sorting kids after fifth grade or starting in sixth grade. And how do you address that? And is it possible to have an opt-out system as opposed to an opt-in system? Because I think it's easier to be in an accelerated class and a month in say, you know what, this is just not for me. But once you've started taking a lower level class, nobody's gonna bump you up. Even if you're getting all A's on tests, it is just not how, I don't think it's the reality. So, So that's it. I mean, it's not an easy solution or an easy ask, but
Just to share.
people
with
fall into old patterns. Like, I think that, I think that naturally happens.
Yep.
And so it will be an uphill battle to not fall into those.
Yeah, we need to create a whole new system so that that doesn't
Yeah.
happen. I will share with you. The opt-out component was kicked around for a while before we recommended opt-in. And so we had some really good conversations with specifically with some sixth grade teachers to really understand. Because that was our original go at it, it was an opt-out system. And some of the concerns that came immediately were just about the amount of lessons in sixth grade that still relate to numeracy and some key skill building components. And I think here's what I wonder. So let me summarize it. In summary, there was a concern that students would get placed into a class without enough information to understand that they actually really need to be in that math 6 class to build some of that fluency and numeracy. And I think because of the timeline that we are currently in, there's a different fear perhaps than maybe a year from now what we recommend. So I guess what I would say is, I don't know that opt-in will always be how we live. It might be that we think through next year's system of what we need to get in front of kids and maybe make it an opt-out. The biggest fear of the sixth grade teachers who I spoke with, was that there's not enough time to get families and teachers to really understand why some of our students need to have that math 6 numeracy component in order to be successful. And they were worried that kids are going to be jammed into a class where which would be a disservice to them because their progression would naturally fit them in another direction. And they think that it's less of a risk to go the other way for some students. I don't know that I fully agree, but they had some really strong feelings on what that would look like. I do think we could study that next year in the conversation. David and I have already talked about, we need to start to create some mechanisms where we can identify how we're reaching out to kids who would naturally be successful in an accelerated pathway. And we have 2 years worth of data that show us the rough percentage of kids who should be at that level, right? It went from 350 on average of our 8th graders to 500. So it went up to that 50% across our district, right? And so that's what we should be expecting when we are looking at our enrollment in our 6th grade. So it's my non-answer, but just to let you know, like that, I think that idea of opting out versus opting in is something we need to continue to think about, because I agree with you. I do personally believe that it is a better default for us to scoop all those students in. And then if we need to find support for them, we can. Also, because the majority of our kids are going to be in 6, 7 anyway. So finding space for some kiddos who might need to find an alternate path should be easier than the other. So.
And if you increase vertical collaboration like you talked about too, I think you might start to see some of those gaps that would make opt out better, like more viable. Right. To be like, okay, if we shift a little bit of what's going on in 5th to make sure.
Well, we even talked about like what kind of things might we have between 5 and 6 for families who feel like they have a bubble kid.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you're not sure what to do as a family, you have 3 months ahead of you and you want to do some of this stuff because you're worried, here's some great resources that you might be able to. I mean, our goal, different than perhaps a system that existed before, our goal is to have more kids experience this accelerated pathway. It's not to prevent students from getting into an accelerated pathway. It's not to make it exclusive, it's to make it accessible.
I view it as like we made changes, and while they weren't perfect, like we're having a struggle kind of on the top end, we did increase the number of kids that are accessing honors class. Like having the ability to still have that choice at a top point, but adding a choice at the beginning too, I think has the potential to increase our overall participation in honors. We do have like that 93% statistic is amazing, because the research shows that typically when kids are in middle school, they're,
thoughts about how they are as mathematicians, just like plummets. So that's really great. But it also shows that in elementary school, it's the absolute highest. So there's the potential that we could be capturing some kids that maybe after a couple of years in middle school, like, I don't know about that. So I see it as it's an and, not one or the other, like it's an addition to.
I agree with almost everything that everybody said. I don't think I want to repeat anything. Thank you for all the hard work. Really appreciate, and the open mind, openness to listen to. It's hard to listen to things that are talking about things that we have done and that are not working well. So appreciate it. Thanks a lot. I agree with the recommendation, and I do also agree that we cannot fall back to the concerns that we've had, and we need to make sure the on-ramps need to exist at all places, and it's too late to decide how to get to the on-ramps without having all of that. And so I guess it'll take time for us to determine how this will work. The one thing I do not want to lose is feedback from our teachers that they need a lot of support still. That's something that is resounding more than this. So we absolutely need to work on that as well. And I don't know how that will be addressed. I'm sure you're going to work on it and try and address that. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
Just one last comment. Just some sort of kind of almost like a check-in feedback next fall, like, maybe the semester, like kind of how are things going, like based on what you said here, with changes that are coming at the top end and, this different course at the bottom end, like what are teachers seeing? Like, are they experiencing like kind of like what Amanda had talked about, like what have we gained? What have we lost? And so that we can kind of, my hope would be that anything that's an inkling of a problem in the making could be nipped in the bud by asking early.
And that should be part, typically around pilot, right? There's that feedback for that we can kind of start to. So that's good. So because we're proposing a pilot, I don't believe we need a board vote.
Oh, you don't need a vote.
No, it's just, we're recommending that we're piloting this moving forward. A formal vote would be.
It's a good word.
A formal vote would be.
It just says.
Now, if, depending upon the cost of materials, if the cost of those materials is, it'll be beyond the threshold elected. We'll bring that as a request for purchase at the May meeting.
Okay.
I do think it's important that we just recognize that our data is going to be very difficult to have any causal connection to for a long time. So, this spring's data will be based on our first cohort of IM students going through 3 years, this 8th grade. And then we're going to introduce new elements, right? So we just need to recognize that. And I think, I just wanted to say that out loud because I think it's going to be quite a while before we can causally state that one thing is attributing to something else. Because we're going to have pilots going on, we're going to have a former system going on, we're going to have other adjustments that are happening. That doesn't mean we won't be looking at the data. We will certainly be looking at that data and looking at how our students continue to perform. We'll also be, obviously, we've been on a wonderful trajectory of improvement. We want to continue to see that regardless of what's happening. And that will be something that you'll see at the board table when we look at that high level information. But I just wanted to just kind of name that. I think it's really important that we recognize that we are disrupting this system again, which is not a bad thing. It's just not a thing.
Yeah.
Correct. Shifting.
Correct.
Okay. Yes. Any other comments?
Beautiful math.
So potentially this will come in our, what is that called? The consent agenda for the?
No. For the purchase.
For the purchase, that's what I meant.
That won't be for a little, we have to figure.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
Oh, okay, so it'll be sometime in June, maybe.
Probably.
Yeah, it says May, so.
Maybe
Okay.
May.
But you'll
Not
put it
May,
in
we won't have
communicate,
May.
you'll kind of price out.
Yeah,
Okay.
We could get a rough estimate just to let you know.
Assume two teachers.
Yeah.
put all that in there.
And then once we've kind of worked out the summer plan, fall plan. And the cost associated with that, well,
Would that also include additional help material that the teachers are asking for, probably, right? It's a combination of accelerated path as well as the help that the teachers were
We'll have to
asking
put
for.
that in a proposal for as well.
And help goes to like everybody, not just the. Yeah.
Correct, yeah.
Parent materials.
All businesses.
I see.
Christine, are you anticipating like pushback from any of the teachers are the majority of the teachers on board with this?
I think that there will be, so in fairness, that I have not communicated with them since I met with them, since David and I met with them. My plan is to communicate with them tonight. David and I drafted a letter to send to them based on, pending how our conversation went today. I think that they will all be responsive because I believe that there is an interest in some way in all of our buildings to explore this. I think it's just the timeline. And so we're just gonna work through that with them and be as supportive as we can be in order to move those things forward. If I felt like were going to be angry, I would be telling you that. I don't think that's the case.
Thank you.
I think they're going to be, it's the timeline. I think some of them would have preferred more time, but I think they will be able to adapt, hopefully, for us to move through. Our principals everyone's aware we're having this conversation tonight. So we'll send out that communication. We're going to send that communication out to our principals and our teachers this evening, and then also our elementary principals and then ask them to forward it to our 5th grade teachers. We won't have communication for parents for a couple days. We need to kind of get our feet underneath us.
Yes.
And then we want to be able to provide resources that our principals can then share at the 5th grade parent nights. And then we will open our selection window we can give flexibility in that, through the end of May, first week of June, school's over, so that parents have enough time to have a conversation if they want to have it, sit down, ask questions. The good news is our principals are familiar with historically what a 6-7 structure looks like. And so I think it won't be uncomfortable for our middle school principals to have that conversation, and be able to be supportive. Okay.
Any other comments? We can move on to the next topic. Thank you so much.
Great, you guys. Appreciate it. Okay, we get to stay for the next one. Oh. I don't have a presentation for us to discuss, especially designed instruction. I know that Rich sent out a communication specifically to talk about implementation of that as related to the communication and specific to the topic that is on the agenda. The intention was for us to communicate with you about specially designed instruction as related to supplanted secondary classes. So that's in middle school and high school for our diploma bound students. So this is for students who may have taken a non-tier 1 math or English class specific to math and English that had historically been taught by a special education teacher. The state of Michigan has changed the requirements for teachers of core content classes, that all teachers of core content classes need to be content certified in order to be able to teach that class. The vast majority of our special education teachers are not content certified, they're special education certified. We have a handful of teachers who are. Most of the teachers who are not currently teaching those supplanted classes. So we've been working at our middle schools. We've been working on this for 3 years. So in most of our middle schools, we're in pretty good shape. Our middle schools have changed that structure over the course of the last 3 years. We used to have language exclamation point as a program that was taught. That's been phased out over the last 3 years, and our students have gone into tier 1 instruction. We had a variety of different math classes that were offered at the middle school. Most of those have been phased out over the last 3 years, and those students have been supported in tier 1 instruction. In our high schools, we've been growing these kiddos up, right? Because once they're in, we kind of got to finish them through. So we have fewer students who are coming in 9th grade who require those services, but we have students who are currently in our 9th and our 10th and our 11th grade classes who are receiving supplanted instruction. So the course of this year, beginning in September, Sarah Smotherman, myself, and David and a leadership team have come together with special education teachers at the table to talk about how do we make these transitions and what will it look like for our students. Our math teams have had multiple meetings now to look specifically at each individual child, what classes they're in, and then where they could transition that would make sense. So for instance, we have students who are in the high school who may be taking integrated one, which is a special education specific supplanted math class. That's followed by integrated math 2. We've been looking at how do those two courses align with our newer course, which is the intensified algebra class. So intensified algebra is a double block algebra class that teaches algebra content as well as pre-algebra content and executive functioning skills. It's all built into the curriculum. The vast majority of our students who are in supplanted math will be able to transition into that intensified algebra class. So we're working through, okay, which students might not fit. If they don't fit, how are we going to service them? When they are serviced, they have to have a content certified math teacher teaching a class if we have to create one of those classes. So that's what we're working on in math. In English, we believe that all of our high school students will be able to be served in our tier 1 classes for English. So they maybe were in linguistics class. That's what our supplanted classes were called. They'll transition into one of our sections of either English 9, English 10, English 11, or elective. We are working with our special educators to schedule those students in small cohorts so that they're able to be supported efficiently in those classrooms. The piece that we wanted to make sure that you were aware of as a board is this is a pretty big change that will impact many of our general education teachers. And so as we work with our gen ed teachers, a part of that work is focusing on accommodations, modifications, and universal supports, and how those 3 things can work together to ensure that all of our students are being successful. This May, at a development day, we're going to really in earnest start having some direct conversations about what do accommodations and modifications look like in the general education program. We are studying 2 texts that we may be using. We're trying to decide which text we're going to be using to help guide our work at the secondary. One is a text that came out, I think, in 2017 or 18. It's called Your Students, My Students, Our Students, or something along those lines. It sounds just like that. And it really talks about inclusion in the classroom. And then there's a new book that just came out and it's called All Means All. And it's published by Solution Tree. And those both focus on how do we create inclusive classrooms to ensure that all students are being supported. A key piece and change, this is probably knowledge you don't need to have, but it's good to know. Back in like 2010 and 2011, previous to 2010 and 2011, modifications were more common in our schools, and they were identified through modified grades that students were given on their transcripts. And it was a lever that was used in order to have more students in our tier 1 classrooms. And then there was some legislation that passed around what could or couldn't be put on transcripts. When that happened, a lot of students were pulled out of tier 1. Then this happened across the state. This happened in Troy. I was in Bloomfield at the time. We are now back at it and talking about what modifications look like in order for us to have students be successful in the classroom. So there are not many modifications currently happening, meaning the difference between an accommodation and a modification is an accommodation is a tool that we might put in place or an adaptation to be able to support you accessing the full curriculum as it is. A modification is the removal of parts of the curriculum in order for you to be able to move forward. So very different in their approach. In our schools right now, we do not have many modifications happening. I believe that for some of our students with some specific IEP goals, a modification may be more appropriate than them having been previously placed in a separate track of classes. So that's what we're working through. We wanted to be really transparent because people may ask you questions. Those conversations are happening one-on-one with every child who's involved. So any child who was in a supplanted class, whose class might be changing for next year, that's a conversation that's happening with the caseload provider and the families so that they have an understanding of what that can look like. The good news in Troy is that it is a small number of students. right? So when we're looking at that number, it's a small number of students. And I think that makes it manageable when it comes to those one-on-one conversations. It gives us that flexibility to have them. That's the right thing to do. It also may impact how IEPs are written, right? Because those support services look a little bit different. They may be push-in, they may be team taught, right? We are currently working with our special ed team to explore what that support looks like in the classroom. That's not defined currently. So we won't be able to define that until we know where those kids are landing and then how we can best support them.
So just to understand the volume, how many kids are we talking about?
So like, for instance, at Athens, we're talking about 5 10th graders.
Okay.
Going 5 current 9th graders going into 10th grade. I think we have 9 incoming 9th graders at Athens. The numbers are very, very.
So less than
in
10
ELA.
per-
That's in
per
ELA.
grade.
Say that again.
Less than 10 per grade approximately?
Around 10 per grade, I would
Around
say,
10 per grade.
give or
Okay.
take. And it's different
In
in
each school.
in each school, in each content,
Content.
English and math. Some of our students are in both,
Okay.
some are not in both.
Okay.
So is this just 9 through 12,
No, it's 6 through 12.
6 through 12? And, just lost my other question. Let's see. I guess the other question is, so is this change in approach, is this research based? I mean, has this been found to be more advantageous to kids and their learning?
So it's a required change by the state, which is why we're doing
I
it.
understand, that,
But
which is
it
why.
also very much, it very much aligns to the conversations we were having a couple years ago, when we were thinking about our MSK 12 work, with Nate Levinson. So what we've really talked a lot about is the best place for students to be is in tier 1 instruction when possible.
Mhm.
And so our students should be in tier 1 instruction with supports, and those supports could be universal supports, accommodations, modifications. Those should be exhausted before you're looking for any sort of supplanted instruction.
And I remembered my other question. Is it just in math and English or ELA?
It is, yes.
The two
Yes,
core
those are the only areas where Troy, it could be in other districts, it could be everywhere. But in Troy, those are the only 2 key areas where we have students who are in supplanted classes.
Okay, so currently like a student who's in a supplanted reading class, let's say, whatever that's called.
Yep.
Is in like bio.
Regular bio.
And how are they being supported in regular bio?
So that is exactly the conversation we've been having, because they're in regular bio, they're also in regular world history.
Because we
And-
could just be giving them A's and not like supporting.
Well, right, and so those are the conversations that we're having, right? Like, so we're having conversations about, are they being successful in bio or world history?
Yeah.
If so, what is happening in those
Yeah.
classrooms? Because if whatever's happening in those classrooms to make them successful,
Let's reply that.
we can do that in ELA and math.
Mhm.
Along as long as what we know that they're doing is it something that we would believe is what's good for kids.
Mhm.
So it's helping us to dig into looking at those pieces. So those are the conversations that we're having with each one of their caseload workers to identify how are those kids pushing out into other classes?
Mhm.
Are they being modified and we're just not tracking that modification? What's happening? So those are the conversations we're having.
Well, because typically a student who's receiving a reading support, let's say, is getting hopefully an intensive focused reading intervention.
Right.
And I'm trying to figure out if my kid can't read well.
Yeah, so they could do in bio.
Sixth grade, what are you doing in bio? First of all, 6th grade, they're going into 6th, let's say, and they can't read well, and they've been getting an intense intervention in elementary for that. Is someone gonna like push in and like pull them to the back of the room or?
Right, so great question about the
And more
intervention.
for that is like, do we have runway for these gen ed teachers? I feel like our special ed folks are probably running so hard their heads are spinning, but I think our gen ed folks are gonna hit this hardest.
And it's going to be, I think it's important that it's a yes and component. So if I'm a student who was in supplanted reading and I have like significant reading goals, I may have had my reading goals met in my linguistics class
Okay.
with a specialized instruction provided for me to meet me at my reading level and help me progress.
Mhm.
I was getting those supports and I was getting English credit at the same time, right? That's how the former structure is current right
Something
now.
was going on in linguistics that counted.
That's right.
Got it.
Right. Well, we were counting that,
Got
right?
it,
As a
okay.
district, we were making that decision. And so now what will happen is I will be in, let's say I'm in 10th grade, I'm going in 10th grade English next year. I'll be in 10th grade English with some form of support. It might be push in, I might have a taught teacher, depends on that cohort of kids who are with those students and those students' needs.
Mhm.
And then in addition to that, I'm receiving my support, my supports to meet my reading goals in my integrated studies class.
I
If
forgot about
needed.
integrated
Right.
studies, okay.
So I have a second I have the support for me to access the curriculum, and then I have the support to build upon my goals. Some of our students won't need both.
Right.
Some will just need the support and push in, and that will meet their goals, but others will need both of those things. And then some of our kiddos, as you know, need both and math, right? And we're working with
Yeah,
what that.
that would be dicey.
And when we do that, when you double them up, what do they lose? The electives? Is that what they would lose?
So many of our students have integrated studies right now on their schedules, and that is one of their electives.
That is one of the
Correct.
electives. So
Yeah.
that is, okay.
Yeah, that won't be new. That's
Okay.
something that for some, as a matter of fact, we've actually made gains in having fewer kids have integrated studies on there as an elective because we're providing supports in different ways.
Now, how does this impact our special ed staff? No, I mean, we have these teachers that are teaching.
Yeah.
Now, so now we are pushing them in. What's the plan?
Yeah, so I think
I
it's-
feel like you might need more.
Yeah.
well, so our special ed staff is determined by our caseload, right? So the state gives us a number, right? In secondary, it's 23 as our caseload max. And then for resource room and 25 is our caseload max for teacher consultants. And that is how we determine the FTE that we have allocated across our buildings. And that's how we will continue to determine our FTE across the building. So if I'm a teacher and I have 20 kids on my caseload, I'm a 1.0 special education teacher at the high school. I service those 20 students and I'm there all day long.
Okay,
However I spend my day during that time, I'm still a 1.0.
I see.
So
So there's no impact.
it can be neutralized,
Okay.
right? But that's how we will be scheduling them. So there's not a causal link between the change in this structure and our FTE.
Okay,
So any change in our FTE is based on our caseload and our scheduling based on budget.
So it'll be like a resource room teacher might kind of, for lack of a nicer term, bop around during their day. They would-
push in another class.
They might be teaching 2 hours of, thing,
Yeah.
integrated studies. And then the other for 3 hours a day, because they get a prep.
Yep,
right?
yep.
They'll be
Are
pushing
pushing.
in.
Yes, which is what they do,
whatever
which is what they do now. So it's,
They could be team teaching in and out,
right,
Yeah.
Well, they have collaboration.
depending upon when.
not separate from their 5. They have 5 and a prep.
I mean, just to like, if they're gonna be pushing into English 9 and they're not, like, you want it to be effective.
Yes, we do. want
Right,
to
so
do
they
that.
gotta have to talk at some
Right.
point.
Our goal would be to put them all on the same prep if we can,
I
but
got it.
again, that's the
Okay.
schedule piece of all of it.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I guess a different question would be, right, and this is not an area that I'm so familiar with. If the special education teachers are not content certified, does that have any effect going forward?
No, because they're special education certified, so they still provide those integrated studies support
Okay.
components. And we have also, in our work with NSK 12, we identified part of our work over the last 3 years on advancing MTSS in secondary has been to identify areas of specialty for our special education folks. So we've asked them at the buildings, do you prefer to support literacy? Do you prefer to support mathematics?
Okay.
And then we've trained them as we've gone through math recovery, as we've gone through RA for all. We're going to continue to do that. So they build specialty skills.
The effect is it's going to increase the student count for our tier 1 instructors by like 10 or 8 or
Yeah.
whatever.
Mhm.
That's
Yep.
that's the main impact for
Yeah,
us.
it's really important to remember that for a diploma bound student, they're a tier 1 student first.
Yeah.
And they're not someone else's student first. They're tier 1 first. I provide the support second.
Well, it's not 10 for teacher, it's
Yeah, it's good.
10 a year across
Spread-
the
spread-
board.
spread out. And that's not always been the case where it's, in some cases, it's instead of being a tier 1 student first, you're the special ed
Like
teachers
teachers.
first. No, the state has said, no, tier 1 first, all your content needs to be delivered at tier 1 at grade level with potential modifications or accommodations. And then your support is provided outside of tier 1 with that specialized instruction.
Right.
Whatever that might be.
It's
No,
like a big tier one learning curve. For some folks.
It could be.
It will be for some.
Yeah.
And that's where the training, and the professional learning that we're providing comes in.
And our commitment is that this is something that is launching in May and then continues as we go into next school year. Like this is just an ongoing conversation that we need to have. And contextualizing it is incredibly important, right? We have next year, we have 106 students at Troy High School who will have an IEP, period. That's the end of that sentence. 106 students out of 2100.
20, so 25
Right.
kids per grade.
So we, when we're thinking about the adaptation and modification that are at the extreme end, there's a small number who will require that level of a modification. But we also know there's a lot of steps that our teachers can take in all of our classrooms to benefit all students. And that's that piece that we start with, right? And then we start to talk about what does it look like next. But it's really just, there's, you know, again, the reason we shared it with you is because there may be concerns that are brought forward. There may be concerns that parents share in the community that say, my child, we thought my child was going to have these classes and now we're being told they're not offered anymore. They're not, you know, they're not meeting the needs of my child. It's important for you to understand, yes, that's true. Those classes aren't being offered, but this is the structure that we're working to implement. And we'll work with every family to make sure that each child has a separate program that meets what they need.
Yeah. No, I have a very generic questions. I'm not very knowledgeable with the whole state regulations and requirements. And this came about because we were not compliant with certain state regulation. And is that the case?
A full date.
Yeah.
Change.
This is,
Oh, it's a change that happened recently.
yeah.
I see.
Actually,
Okay.
It's in line with federal IDEA law that we're
Okay.
supposed to educate kids in the least restrictive environment.
Mhm.
But over time, we've kind of gotten away from that. And so
With these
the
special.
state is saying like, yeah, we
As a
need to,
state, yeah.
kind of get this back in.
Okay.
Because every student, regardless of their disability, is supposed to have exposure to grade level content.
Particularly the diploma.
Yes, diploma,
Yes.
yes.
I see.
So, I mean, we're basically,
Following what the
Yeah.
state is telling us.
and,
Okay.
and federal law.
Okay, the federal. Okay. Thank you.
How do we make a decision who's diploma bound and who isn't?
Those are IEP conversations that are had like by the team throughout their time, and mostly that starts really in secondary. And that's a conversation that we have. And I think a lot of those key drivers are based on being able to access the curriculum.
The level cognitive impairment.
And we have students who, I think one of the wonderful things to celebrate here, and I'm sure you know this, we have students who are non-diploma bound students who are in some of our programs at our high schools, who are in some of our core content classes. And they're, you know, so like there's a great give and take around like where some skills are and how we can encourage our students to continue to grow. So I think that's a celebration.
I appreciate the update.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Christine. So back to our agenda and the fact that it is 5 minutes past 9. Do we want to move our strategic plan discussion? Because there's no urgency. The point is we have to start in fall. Do you want to move it to another day or do we want to?
Are we just
Push
talking about which vendor
Which was going to give us a small
Two
update.
questions that I need from you all, just kind of a thumbs up, thumbs down is, the first is, do we want to engage a facilitator? And if so, what I provided you was, were two options. One was a more, an ASB is more local, Michigan centric. The price is reflective of that. The other, education elements is a nationwide firm. They work with districts across the United States, and their approach would be more national, broader perspective. I think they do have some proprietary surveying and things along those lines that they utilize. The cost significantly more.
Quite a bit.
It's significantly more, yeah. And it's, I will also say they were actually just purchased. So by another company, I don't anticipate anymore. I don't anticipate service to be any different, but, so that's really, I mean, if we want to go, so there would be absolutely nothing wrong with either. They both essentially provide the same level of service. If you looked at the kind of the deliverables in terms of the amount of meetings, focus groups, there will be a survey. I would say the education element survey will probably be a little more robust, but simply because they do it on a more national scale. MSP has been doing this work locally, and then they will certainly tailor their offerings to our needs. So if we want a little more, let me put it this way. I think MASB would probably be a little bit more flexible in terms of how much we want from them. Versus how much how much could we do internally and want to do internally versus what we would want them to do. Educational elements would likely be more of a turnkey, option.
There is a third option I want to bring up. I think the last time we did it, I was just new on the board at the time. We did it all internally.
Well, that was the question I had. Is,
Third one, yeah.
given what we have available, do we have internal? Do you feel we have internal staff capacity?
Oh, I think we certainly have capacity to do the work. We will, of course, need to prioritize. We're talking about, we're talking about a survey, focus groups, listening sessions, and so forth. Those are certainly all doable internally. I don't think either Kendra or I are opposed to having someone come in and help facilitate at all. In fact, probably would welcome some facilitation services to take that off of our plate, given where we're going to be in the fall.
Yeah.
But we certainly could do it.
I like the idea of having a facilitator, somebody who doesn't have a vested interest in any particular outcome, not insinuating any type of, bad faith or anything, but I think having somebody who is neutral, doesn't have any I think there's a benefit to
I
that.
would tend to agree. I think people are likely to be maybe more open.
Yeah.
Or free to respond, if it's coming from a third party.
I remember the last time we did a strategic plan was when?
We did the last one and, we rolled it out and what it was during.
2020.
pandemic.
And end of
We had started it in the fall of 2020 and then we went into the pandemic.
Was it a whole rebuild or was it just like?
It was a refresh.
So I'm not really interested in doing a whole, I don't want to crash everything down and start over. I'm more interested in like a refresh. That's my personal thing.
I think that was kind of like this.
I think a facilitator can also be a part of that.
Yeah.
I don't think a facilitator.
Well, I was looking at what education elements, they have two
Oh, that's-
options, the refresh of the current plan or build a new strategic plan.
Even if refresh was expensive.
I know. It's crazy.
I think if generally speaking, you all are comfortable with a third party, my recommendation would be because it's cheaper and given where we're headed with the budget, we don't need to spend more if we can get a good product out of someone who's local, no problem at all with that.
And I
So,
like that it's Michigan.
yeah,
It's
so
not-
we're comfortable.
Let me ask each one of you, what do you think?
So I just had a couple, I'm not opposed to a facilitator, but I had kind of thought in my mind, I guess if we think we need anonymity. So I was thinking people would be in the room at, both groups, because I'm always a little hesitant to you lose some of the richness of what's being talked about when it's summarized, but I hadn't really thought that people thinking people might be more forthright if there was a neutral third party in the room. I wasn't thinking along those lines at all. My only thought is that you could hire a facilitator to facilitate meetings and so on without doing the kind of.
The entire
full-
package.
The full package.
I see, okay.
If in fact it was just wanting someone to facilitate so that if people were in the meeting, they could be listening. Cause it's always, easier to pay attention when you don't have to facilitate.
Okay, so a third aspect.
I like the idea of having like a knowledgeable facilitator, MASB, fine, I don't need to spend more. Kind of walk us through the process, just for our own learning and, I just look at what we listened to tonight, and I feel like our people are pretty maxed out. So having someone else kind of take us through this, I think would be helpful in more than one way. And again, since we're, like, in my opinion, it's kind of like the refresh, like, we're not reinventing the wheel, but, we do need to look and, where, what do we add? What do we take away? What do we gain? What do we lose? And I think having someone from the outside could give us, just having that neutral perspective, I think would be, okay, I like that idea, yeah.
So a full package, maybe from an outsider like MASB, instead of just a facilitator, is what you're thinking.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. So I'm missing.
With who?
MASB.
Okay.
What you know? No, I think a whole package actually makes a lot
Okay,
more
full
sense.
package, okay.
Just because I was gonna say the same point, our administration has enough on their plate right now, and I think if you're gonna do it appropriately and actually do a true refresh, I think you should have somebody that's a third party in there that
Okay.
just make sure we're doing it accurately. If we're gonna spend money and time, we might as well do it right, so.
I guess I started off with saying that out loud anyway.
You wanted the third party. and-
Yeah, I just think it's, we have lots of big items happening next year especially, but I think with the newness of the board, relatively speaking,
Yeah.
I think it would be good to just have somebody on the outside do it.
Yeah, and totally agree. I don't think we need to do crash everything down and start over again. I like the idea of an MASB rep, because, it's kind of specific to, Michigan as opposed to national, So, yeah, I like the idea of a facilitator. I've never sat through a strategic plan, so I'm.
Most of us have not.
Yeah.
Yes,
We just.
I was busy on the board when we started it.
So I think it's
So,
great.
yeah. Okay,
MASB facilitated refresh.
okay.
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 For all the reasons
That's
already
the
stated.
direction. I don't have to say anything.
I think we're pretty much.
So you can-
Debbie be,
Debbie,
Debbie Stair be the person.
I can request her, I'm not
Yeah.
sure that.
So
but
my
they're
only
real concerned
caution,
about it,
because
but-
we used MASB for the superintendent search, and MASB has some very good people, but they always also have some. So, yeah, Debbie's good.
The 100,
Yeah.
you had taken, then she did it.
Yeah, but she has people that work for her. So
Yes.
we need to, yeah, so we need to.
Like we could pull string.
Yeah, we just need to make sure,
Right?
I will see if she's okay.
yeah, because she's good.
And just just so you know, from a timeline perspective, a refresh, it's about 6 months. We would likely start in October. We would finish in April. That would give Kendra and her team plenty of time to get all of the materials together for a kickoff in the fall. Okay, so fall,
Cool.
7 kickoff.
Okay, all right, that brings us to the other.
You don't have a lot of things kicking off in the fall.
Okay, that brings up to the other, any other?
I just was gonna ask, so, what is, remind me again the timeline for voting for, the Oakland.
So, May 1st.
Keep sending messages.
May 1st is the candidate filing deadline. And they have a meeting, I believe, on May 5th. And the vote needs to happen by May 20th or a little earlier than that. So I think our May meeting is the only one that we can do it. but we do not have the candidate list yet because May 1st is the deadline, and this meeting happened before our May 1st. So,
And as of, when I went to the government relations committee meeting, Gary had been the only one that had filed.
yes, that's what
At
I've seen.
at that point, and we haven't seen any other updates, so, as of 3 weeks ago, or two, I don't know, it's more, but as of a couple weeks ago, there was only the one candidate.
Did you, was this the one where we have to go in person to?
Yes, so we all nominate a person. Last time it was Matt. Our representative will go in person to Oakland schools and vote for us.
To vote anonymously after we publicly decided.
There is a ballot box and we put our vote in the ballot box. We clearly say Troy and we clearly say the name and put it in.
Are you at the time frame? You could just like pull into the,
No, it is right next door.
So the reason they want us in person, I believe, is if there were ties or if there were some things like that you need to be there in person to choose or something like that.
I think we'll find out
remember
more than
that.
this, so I think that.
But I don't know if it's going to be that competitive, but I'm just letting you know.
Depending on the next project.
So we will have to decide, I will send out a note once we get all the candidates. As soon as the Oakland schools, OCSBA will send out, it's Oakland schools, not OCSBA. Oakland schools will send out the candidates, and they usually send out a little blurb for each candidate. And then all you have to do is send me an email saying you prefer this person. And then decide, because I can't ask you.
Right.
And, yeah, you just send me only an email, and that's all it is.
okay.
All right, any other?
For time's sake, I'm gonna pass.
Yeah, good.
I have one other, we haven't talked about, a book read for a while. And I know there's been, I know I've been looking it up for years, but, there's been lots of coverage in the press over the last couple of months about general technology in classrooms. iPads, computers and everything else. So, and I think it might be, a nice tie-in with the anxious generation and the work we did around cell phones. So I would suggest that maybe, especially since we haven't done one in a while, that might be, a timely topic, and even the ELA curriculum recommendations, part of that was how tech intensive is it, right? Because we've gotten rid of the one-to-one iPads in K through 2. So I think, I think there is, and even at the government relations committee meeting, there is a school up north that has completely gotten rid of their computers. And there's an international and a national push, I think, starting. So I think we should start having,
Do you have a book in mind? Or?
I haven't, there was a book in one of the articles that I read. I don't remember the name of it right now. I don't mind doing like a first read of it. So I will get the book. I will email the name of it. And I'll probably ask Judy if she could order.
Sure.
And I can either read it first and, see what I think of it, or if people just want to go and see, but there was a book that was recommended. I don't think it has to be the best or the ideal or the perfect. I think, the goal is for us to start having this.
I have a slightly different idea. I like the idea of book read, and I was actually thinking about it, and I told Rich this too, that we could do a book read in summer for us. But the last 2 books we had were technology related, anxious generation and all of that. So I was wondering if we should read a book relating to all the books, one of the things that David has been saying. So maybe if we could pick one of those books, that is my suggestion. But I'm open to anybody and everybody. So I'm open to any book, but it would be nice to have a summer book read.
I'm not opposed to, because we haven't really done one in a while, and I don't know that we have to go back to reading as many as we did previously, but, I think I wrote down the name of one of the books that, David,
Yes.
I can't see it right now, so late.
We can ask.
I don't think One will just be kind of for our understanding, so that's a different type of discussion because the laws passed, we're going forward with the ELA, so one is more for just our understanding, and I think that's useful too.
Yeah, the one about the media versus the reality that I would be very interested in
Yeah.
that, because then we can be educated when we talk to.
And that was the one that I.
Is that the one fact checking the science of reading, Robert Tierney and David Pearson?
There was Beyond the Science of Reading, what I think was the one that I've written, but we can, I think that's, I think we should do both, because one is just for our understanding as we're going through the process. The other one is for us to start having some policy discussions. So I think they're two very different book reads. What order we do them in, I don't,
Yeah, we can all decide, whichever order we want to do them, but we could do one at least, and if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
So another idea too, along those lines, just to muddy the waters further, is one of the things that students do is sometimes book tasting. So like everybody brings a book, talks about the book.
Oh, so we
and you
need
can
to
do-
read a different book and talk about it.
Yeah, and you can
Okay.
do the articles too, if you're trying to
Yeah,
like
that's not bad.
decide where to go next for a book, like, all right, we want to read a book because I love the policy angle of the tech piece, because that's our lane, right, policy? And to talk through that, and that it could be tech in science, tech in math, tech in whatever, people in behavior, whatever, who knows? But, so there's another thought about how to decide which book or how to, or article to decide which and when, however, I'll read anything, but.
Yeah, okay. I'm good with anything. Isa, any other?
I'm sorry, no. No, her face
Stephanie?
never tells the truth. I just want to say thank you. I appreciated tonight, both your respectful comments, because it's, the topics we talk about are super passionate and really important on big levels. And I really appreciate being a part of a body that's able to have respectful discourse where all of our opinions are valued, and that I felt that tonight. So thanks to all of you. And I appreciate particularly you, Madam President, for making sure you heard from each of us. I really liked a little bit being put on the spot to make sure that we talk, because sometimes I'm honestly not sure still when I should be like, I should do this, or I shouldn't say that. So thank you.
Rich, any other?
Well, you've got invites to a lot of things going on. I know that, you're busy. So any of those that you are able to stop by, great. We have Teacher of the Year reception tomorrow at Troy High, 4:30, is it, Kendra?
Yeah.
Yes.
4:30, Incredible Kids is tomorrow. Stephanie, I think will you sign up for that? Did you see?
Yes.
Incredible Kids tomorrow night? Okay, at,
6:30 or 6:30?
Yeah, 6:30, 4:30 and 6:30.
yeah, at the community center, right?
Yes.
And then, we've got 8th grade interviews starting this week. Boulan starts on Thursday. I'll be there Thursday morning. So.
Well, it's tomorrow. Tomorrow. I'll be at Boulan tomorrow.
Oh, they're in tomorrow.
Yeah.
Somewhere near tomorrow on Thursday. Great. Spring updates are going really well. We're, this week we didn't have very many because it's end of the month, but first week in May, it really gears up again. So we're, hold on.
I have only one topic. We've combined our community conversation as a board and the superintendent conversation with the community, because there's so much happening and none of us have the time to do separate things. So what day is it, Kendra?
It's the 21st.
May 21st, I believe, and it's in the evening.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a combined super.
Conversation.
Okay, so anyone who can join are welcome to join. It's May 21st at 5 p.m. at Athens, I think.
Here.
Oh, here, okay.
Actually, central office, our new central office.
The new, we're gonna show off the new central office. Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
She said, what time?
so
5.
5 on May 21st,
Yes.
5 p.m. central office, Rich and any of us who can join.
Cool.
And to that point, just so, a lot of folks in this building will be working remotely on Friday because they're moving everything back to central office. So, and then Monday we will be back open for business and central office.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Stop in, please, and see it. It looks great.
Okay.
They did a great job.
And we have a break for 2 weeks. Our meeting is on May 17th or 19th? Yes, May 19th, Tuesday.
That's 3 weeks.
3 weeks, exactly. That's what I was gonna say. 2 weeks is a regular cadence.
Yeah.
We had this meeting early. So.
Yep.
All right, Rich, enjoy your break. I think you're going to go on somewhere.
I'm gonna be in London.
Yes, that's right. That's why we had to move this. Well, meeting is tomorrow. It's 9:30.